button. We'll click that. You can run through those lists of naughty words one more time for checking audio levels.
You got me live now, so don't play with me. Okay?
I tried.
I'm gonna do that. No way.
Just start the stream within half a second, smegma. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's sorry. To be fair, it was Smegman Bear. It was French. Okay. Yeah. It was cheesy. So, I've got a certain je ne sais quoi to my
Oh
curse
my goodness.
words. They're not your base curse words. I'm an educated man. What am I gonna do?
So, for the
Anyway,
people who were...
what are you streaming, Austin? Something
So, I'm
awesome?
streaming...
Like,
So, there's been a lot of advancements made in PlayStation emulation with a program called DuckStation. So, what you can do in this program for PS1 emulation, you can use your wheel and spoof it as an NG-Con controller, which was one of those weird twist controllers that came out for the PlayStation 1 to kind of simulate analog sticks before analog sticks were a thing.
That. Yeah.
So you can...
I think Simbin actually released a version of that as well.
That sounds right.
Later on. They went through KW suspension.
Okay.
Klaus Wolfhard, an old friend of mine and business colleague, and they shipped some hardware. I think they got it produced in China, but whatever. We all forgive China for the Wuhan virus anyway, so that's completely fine.
So yeah, you can spoof a steering wheel by running it through the NG-Con controller inside the emulator, so it essentially picks up your analog inputs, and you can have analog throttle and brake on all PS1 racing games. So you can play Gran Turismo with a wheel. Today we're playing Colin McRae Rally, which is running through the attract sequence right now. As people slowly funnel into the chat, which I haven't titled this anything dubious, just to mess with people, so if they click on it, they're like, who the fuck is this random mysterious man who is co-commentating along Austin? There's no announcements or anything like this. Ian, introduce yourself.
Yeah. You go. Hello, my name is Ian Bell. I made a few games. Well, I made 17 games, to be fair. To hell with modesty. I made GTR 2, okay? Now, to be fair, I did nothing but tell other people what to do and watch it. So I can't take credit for it. It was a lot of smart people who did that shit. We went from there to selling ourselves out on Need for Speed, making arcade games, and I thought, look, let's bring it back. I created the world's first, let's say, crowdfunded with payback system that actually functioned, that I managed to push through the Financial Services Authority back then. They're now the FCA. Of the UK, and we created Project Cars together as a conglomerate of 80,000 beautiful people all working together on a particular dream, and that to me was the best times of my life. But yeah, I can't complain. We moved on from there. We got bought up by Codemasters, great company. They were very good to us. They gave us complete independence, and then we were bought out with Electronic Arts, and yeah, I'm a man of my word. I did say I'd never work for those certain things I said, and I didn't. But there was I can't go into the reasons. But anyway, I the details.
So
but
you haven't been with them for how long is that? Because that was announced in November or December? When was that
November,
announced?
December is when we were still talking to Take-Two. So Take-Two were planning to take over Codemasters. They came in with an offer.
No, I mean when you parted ways with EA and the Codemasters conglomerate, that was only a few months ago, right?
Yeah, that was October. That was it should have been earlier, but I told my lawyers on it, and it should have been earlier. But I had a 6-month thing I wanted to do there for reasons I won't go into. Well, I was okay to do. And so I'm not there anymore, and I won't say a bad word about EA actually right now, because they've been great with our team. They've transformed. They're let's say their internal HR department. They're now a good group of people. The people that I worked with were fantastic. I want to give a shout out to Steve Poynton, who is a great guy, who actually is not there anymore. And yeah, there were some other people at the top who were pretty decent guys, and they looked after me very well. So I'm not going to complain, but I have to be true to my word, and it wasn't something that I could sustain long term working for a big corporate. So I did not. But yeah, once my non-compete ends, I have big plans, and the world's gonna love what's coming.
So does that mean there's another game on the horizon, or is this part of your what's it called? Not charity work, but mental health work.
Well, I'm doing the mental health work is doing it's actually flowing itself. I've brought people in to run that. Um, they're doing a great job. I will be setting up a Hardy Street clinic in London, where I'll be working myself. I'm currently on my fourth doctorate, which is much more sort of psychologically focused, particularly with regards to personality and behavior during COVID lockdown. Actually, the title is Data Analysis of the Psychological Effects of Working from Home, which I think is pretty is let's say the zeitgeist, something that we're working or all worried about at the moment. So yeah, I'm working on that, and the game ideas I have, of course, I can't stop myself. I have concepts, and I also own the cryptocurrency, which is about it's in its formative stages, but it's got a great name, madcoin.com. I
Have
own the
you
company
announced this anywhere?
Madcoin
Let's stop
Limited.
you. Let's stop you in the middle of this. Have you announced
No,
this anywhere?
this is
Oh,
you're getting an exclusive here,
oh
my
Jesus
man.
fuck. Hello, Game Informer
You're
and
getting an
IGN.
exclusive.
Shit, piss, cunt, motherfucker. You can quote me on that. That's my statement.
You're getting an absolute exclusive here. So Madpoint are, I love my acronyms. So it's Media Arts Digital Coin, and the concept is that we work with things like film. I'm sorry, I'm Irish. We use a double syllable on film, right? So film, music, games, yes, potentially, but I got a non-compete that I'm just letting roll out before I get working on any of that. But yeah, I've got concepts for something that is pretty special in the gaming industry related to Madcoin, and I got some great people working on it, working on the cryptocurrency aspect of it, which will create the infrastructure, the background for something really special. To me, it's a little bit like World of Mass Development multiplied by 1,000. We're going to kick this one out of the ballpark. I've got big dreams here. I can't help myself. I'm a motivated person, so with this amount of money, I should sit down, relax, buy more yachts, and buy more sports cars and supercars and hypercars, and just buy more houses and relax. But I can't. I love working. I love creating. I love making things. I had some hits, I had some misses, but hey, that's life. You push through, you do what you can, and yeah, I made mistakes, but I think I'm sort of batting above average. So it's fun. It's yeah, we're in an interesting place. So I'm working on something that I can't actually work on at the moment. So I have a concept, um, and I could obviously talk about that concept to other people, and they could work on it. But I got to sit back in the background and just watch it happen based on me saying, "There's an interesting destination. What do we need to do to get there?" And I'm out. And that's effectively what I've done. So that's where we are.
So let's talk about, you talk about hits and misses. Let's talk about your biggest hit, which for those who don't know is GTR2. Talk to us about how that game came to be, the development of it, and when did you guys realize you were onto something big? What point in development did you realize we have a fucking great sim on our hands?
We actually realized that about 3 games before. We made GTR1, which was basically taking the really early work, 2003 work, from the original R Factor engine, even before R Factor was released. I had a good relationship, still have great relationship with Sean uh, Kamash. It's actually Shamak is the pronunciation. But anyway, not a lot of people know that. And so Jean is a great guy, and he licensed the engine to us even before they shipped our factor, and we got the physics from there. Actually, we got everything from there for the original games. And GTR1, we went out with what was a really hardcore simulation. And when I say hardcore, I think we went overboard with the slip angles. It was a little bit
Yes, that game was very
if we're
punishing,
using
similar to what iRacing shipped as and remained for many years, where once you got past a certain
it
slip
was
angle,
punishing.
you just wrecked, right? Like
Yeah,
plastic tires.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that's not the case with real tires. That's not how they operate. You know,
Well, I think it was
the
you who told me
wider the
cars are
slip
like
angle.
self-aligning to some degree when you're trying to save them, and I agree with that.
Well, exactly. These cars want to pull back into line. Now, don't get me wrong. I have a lot of Ferrari. I've only got two Ferraris now. I've only got two Ferraris. I sound like an asshole. I know. I'm down to my last two Ferraris, and I brought them on tracks and I've ripped the shit out of them. I had a Porsche 996 Turbo, which annoyed me that it wasn't a Turbo S. So I decided to bring it to a tuning company in Silverstone, actually based on in the circuit at a warehouse at the circuit in Silverstone. And I said, just turn it up to 11. You know, just take the Spinal Tap analogy and turn this fucker up to 11. Let's go. And they went insane, and I ended up with like 780 pounds per foot of torque. It did have carbon fiber brakes. It was amazing. So I took that around four different circuits around London, north of London, Silverstone, Seven Sisters. Had it shipped over to Ireland and did a trip on Mondello Park,
Ooh.
which was bumpy as fuck. Oh my god! I mean, Jesus Christ! I'm from Ireland, but guys, smooth your fucking tarmac out of it. But anyway,
Probably a
so
weather-related thing, where over the winters it buckles and bends like our roads do.
it exactly. No, to be honest with you, we don't have this huge differentiation between the heat and summer and the heat and winter. What we
Okay.
have is just lazy people who didn't fucking lay down the tarmac or the asphalt or the whatever it was, concrete that looked like actually in certain areas. So anyway, yeah, I raced the shit out of it. But I didn't race against other people. It was all just track days.
Yeah.
But everything that came back to me from the Porsche was slightly different. It had variable four-wheel drive. The Ferraris were all completely rear-wheel drive. My favorite being the 458 because it's normally aspirated. It's not turbocharged, and I also have a Roma now, which has went for the new turbo thing. But I don't think it's as interesting. The sound isn't there. Whatever. Anyway, it had two small seats, and I've got two small girls. So anyway, I raced this. Drove this thing fast around the circuit, and I'm thinking, hey, every time I really get the ass out, even with everything turned off, this car is trying to self-right. And the problem is, and I'm talking back way in the old days now with like a 430 or a 360, it might have been even.
Yep, that sounds about
And
right.
the car was just trying to right itself, and it wasn't trying to oversteer, it wasn't trying to spin out, it was trying to straighten up. And I'm thinking, well, why are we shipping a racing game when you get more than 12 to 14 degrees slip angle? You're in an automatic spin and you can't do anything about it. And that's your limitation. And you got to preempt that spin even before it happens to try to control it. And I'm thinking, well, that's bullshit. That's not how racing games are. So we went from GTR1, we shipped in between GT Legends, which was getting there, I think, in terms of physics.
Yeah, I've
And
heard that
then
too.
for GTR2, we got close. We weren't there, but we got close with GTR2. It still was a little bit excessively punishing compared to real fast driving on a circuit with a supercar. I mean, it really was. But that's what the mainstream, our main, fans, purchasers, punters, I like to call them, that's what they wanted. They felt that was realistic. So let's catch this oversteer before it happens. That's not the case. You can get the ass out completely and then start to filter in the oversteer with a little bit of throttle control at the very, very edge of adhesion. And the car straightens if it's properly set up. And that's how it should be. So, yeah, GTR2 was pretty good, but still a little bit punishing.
And you guys
So
realize
then,
just kind of when you're using that engine, you're like, hold the fuck on. This is a great engine if we get just physics right, and we just implement the right data, and build somewhat,
Exactly.
somewhat robust AI, and you're like, hold the fuck on, this is a really viable product for a lot of sim racers, especially because at the time, I think we
Exactly.
only had one sports car sim, which was Sports Car GT. So
Yes, I
there's a
recall that.
market.
Yeah, I recall that well. Yeah, that's exactly the point. And we made a lot of money from GTR2, and then we decided, well, look, let's make our own graphics engine because we want to improve the look of things. And so we took that graphics engine and we took the ISI base physics, and that's where Need for Speed Shift came from. So we had our own graphics engine. We still didn't move the input output, the IO, to the front end. So it was the first thing that happened. So we didn't have that rate of control, that instant response
Okay.
that you would really want, and that was the key issue. So then we learned, look, we're going to have to just redo our engine because we're trying to plug. I mean, ISI's engine was great if we used it in its entirety, but my overall aim was always to have our own engine, and I always felt that in terms of company value, having our own engine would be extremely
So
important.
you're essentially
So
preparing to sell off the company at some point long into the future when the landscape was dominated by megacorps like EA and Take-Two and Activision, stuff like that.
exactly, I preempted that by about 15 years. So that was the aim. Get us into a position where we have something of value in terms of engine, where we have our own graphics, our own IO, our own physics. And I have to say, the tire model that we worked on, and you know, there were some guys who did fantastic work on that. The tire model that we have had and we've updated in Project Cars is epic. I mean, we may not have implemented it in the most hardcore style, but the hardcore are expecting these cars to slide off the track every 3 seconds. They don't do that.
Well, honestly, one of the
You're,
things the Manus engine does quite well, all three versions of it, which appear in PCARS 1, PCARS 2, and then AMS 2, the Brazilian game, is heat sensitivity. It's really natural to go out and build heat in the tires, starting with cold tires, like in a practice session. Like my rhythm when I go warm tires on my real car, I do that more or less similarly in PCARS because it generates heat properly, whereas a lot of other sims, it feels like it
exactly.
sticks too much.
But look, here's the thing. We went insane. We have three different areas of heat generation. We got shit like we got internal heat, we got surface heat. The internal heat is built up more slowly over time based on the flexion movement of the tire. It's also influenced by the heat of the brake disc. So the
Yes,
brake
that's
disc
a
gets
huge problem in
heat
NASCAR
warmer.
right now.
Yes, yes, and they dissipate heat
Yep.
naturally through the carcass of the tire and even into the air within the tire. And the air heat, the air expands, and then you change the structural contact of the tire with the asphalt. So, so hey, how do we work that out? And how does that work for the long term? And how do you cool it adequately? And how much do I open, my cooling vents for the brakes and we had all that. It's all there in the engine. It's a wonderful piece of tire modeling, but to this day, we're still using. I'm not sure about now because I haven't been in the company for a few months, but we were still using ISI's low-level suspension physics because they're quite brilliant. I mean, it's a wonderful piece of work by a guy called Terrence. He was a genius. He is a genius. Think he still works for ISI. And he came up with this real time, I think back in the old days, 600 hertz based, 3D based physics system that worked on the suspension components based on joints, based on fulcrums, based on length of the suspension components, etc., etc. So you could simulate things like a McPherson strut. You could simulate things like double wishbones. You could simulate trailing arms. You'd effectively do anything in it. It was wonderful work. And it was so fast and precise, really, really good code that to this day, that's the key stuff we're using along with some artificial intelligence. We played with the AI so much that I'm not sure how much of the ISI stuff is left in it. You probably better ask Riza. I haven't looked at it for a while. But I know we're still using that suspension tech, and it's great. It's really, really wonderful. When you have a solution that is more than adequate, there's no reason to change it. And we just felt the tire model for don't forget we were using 2003 based ISI tech here, so we didn't have anything remotely close to R Factor 2, which is basically what we were doing, but they pre-compile it and we were running it real time. Now, running it real time means you have to do some abstraction, reduce the amount of inputs. You can't have too many points being measured touching the surface. And ISI came to the conclusion it was better to pre-compile that, put it into a massive matrix,
Lookup tables, right?
and make use of that. And they probably did the right thing.
So here's a question:
Sorry,
because
a question.
because SATA is it's such complex calculations on the fly. How did the consoles, the Xbox One and the PS4, deal with running what would have been the original Project Cars and Project Cars 2? Was it difficult for them?
It was difficult. The whole physics system took up 2 cores. I think we had 5 or 6 available. They were eating up most of the CPU power that we had available.
And that would essentially mean why the game didn't appear on Nintendo Switch, did it? Because the Switch just couldn't handle it, or it was the Wii U at the time. The Wii U.
It was the Wii U.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get to anything like release frame rates, so that was the issue. When we tried to use what we had, which was this extremely complicated, extremely good, if you use it, and you can see what Ryza are doing with Automobilista 2. It's fantastic work. I'm really proud, and I'm so happy I wrote that contract before we get bought out by the big boys, so that Ryza can roll with it and let people see, hey, here's what you can actually do with this engine. And that engine is sort of 95, 98, maybe 99% us, and about 1 or 2% ISI. So, still got to give credit to the guys at ISI, because there's still a little bit of it in there. It is very, very little now, but it's still in there. So give them credit. The low-level suspension physics are still ISI, from what I know now. I'm not sure, but from what I knew from the date I left, yes, they were. So, yeah, it's a great piece of work, and I want to give them full credit. And I want to thank Jean for everything he's done.
So if GTR2...
We wouldn't be here without ISI, by the way. I've said that before.
And that's a lot of racing sim devs, because the ISI platform being so modular, it opens itself up to just so many different types of circuit racing games.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can pretty much do anything with it, but we did feel that we could do with some, let's say, better looking graphics. So if you're going to change a rendering engine that's completely tied into the rest of the kit, and if you're going to... The thing about the ISI engine is absolutely perfect for a PC, and it was perfect and designed for a PC which had a single loop. So you were working on a single CPU, and it worked beautifully on that. But when you try to split the parts up and have them running simultaneously in different CPUs, which is what we started to do, we got multi-core processors, right?
Yeah.
That's where the world went. That's where the difficulty came, and that's why we had to rewrite the engine. So to make it work on consoles, it required a complete rewrite. We had to redo the I/O. We had to redo the render. We had to change. Well, we actually changed from milds to Fmod on the audio side, and the artificial intelligence we split off into its own loop, and then you have to bridge all of these things to make sure they're synchronized at runtime. And that's where the real complication comes from, because if you go check some of our early work, you'll see on replays the cars will jerk. And
yep, I've noticed that.
That's the physics system and the rendering system and our bridging systems that we wrote, not bridging particularly perfectly. So that's where those issues came from.
Oh, I'm trying to think of what to ask you now. Now I remember.
You want to ask how well hung I am?
That too. That's coming for the darker part of the podcast. But before, okay. I think it's worth asking if if the GTR games ran on ISI motor, and the Shift games ran on ISI motor and featured a pretty large portion of FIA GT1 and GT3 content, are
To be
Shift
fair,
one and
the shift games had our own render system.
okay?
So we plugged the render only into everything that was ISI. So that was our own graphics. For Shift 1, it was a certain, we did it in a certain way. For Shift 2, we did it differently. And I'm not
Could
sure
you
we
argue though
actually.
that the Shift games are GTR 3 and 4? Is I think what I was leading up to.
What?
Because
Sorry, the question again?
are the Shift games 1 and 2 essentially GTR 3 and GTR 4 with FIA GT1
No,
content? No? Okay.
no. They're mass market versions of simulators. That was the aim. We were never GTR One, GTR Two, GT Legends were never mass market versions
Okay.
of racing games. We made what we wanted, and that's what every decent artist should do. I think just make what you want to play, and we were extremely privileged to be in the position where we were able to make what we wanted to play. We had the licenses, we had the great cars, and we thought, how do we want it to be? And we did what the hell we wanted. When it comes to Shift, of course, we're working with Electronic Arts. They're inputting every second um, with their producer or producers and telling us to change this, make it this way, make it. And the constant push was make it more accessible. That was their favorite term. More accessible, more accessible, more accessible. And to me, that also had a sort of synonym with dumb it down. And I didn't like that, and it didn't appeal to me. So we managed to squeeze it through, I think, almost the way we wanted it to be.
It was very close.
Um,
Like pit stops and stuff like damage was removed, and the cars you could really yaw them out and get really fucking sideways. But guys quickly
yeah, but
found.
that's what you can do
Yep.
with real cars.
Yep.
You can yaw them out and get them really sideways. This is what gets me. This notion that the minute you're sorry, and I'm not going to knock any of the competitors because I know them all well. I'm friends with the bosses of the teams. They're selling to what people want. They're selling to what people expect. And people have certain expectations based on certain presumptions or preconceptions that aren't necessarily accurate. That's the issue.
Yeah, some of
You
the low
you
and mid range stuff in Shift is surprisingly accurate. Like a lightly modded Toyota Supra is a really good drive in that game.
Well, yes, I mean you know this because
Yep.
you drive, right? I
Yep.
mean you take cars around circuits and you've actually you race against people. So Austin,
Yep.
you know how
Yeah,
to
yeah.
race. And
Some of the early
the
stuff in
car
the Shift
doesn't spin.
games
How
is
many
really
cars do you
underrated.
see spinning on those loops? How many cars have you seen spinning out because they got more than 13 degrees of
It's basically the
side
reason
spin?
like Chris Harrison car documentaries exist really because he can just yaw 'em out and create beauty footage.
Exactly, and the beauty footage is the oversteer, is the catching the oversteer, is the back wheels burning off the rubber, is the smoke pouring out the back, and is you having an angle of attack to the direction of drive that is massively more than 14 degrees. This is what you can do with any car, and that only happens when he switches off all the support. So
Yep.
when he says, "Hey, let's turn off the traction control, let's turn off the stability control, let's put it onto the I think it's called ESC on the Manatino for a Ferrari. That's where my experience is. Man, you can hold that thing sideways. It just straightens up. I mean, you can be an idiot and do the wrong thing. And
Yeah.
with a Porsche, it's slightly different because all the weight is generally out the back. They've done a lot of work to balance it, but if you lift off on a Porsche, you can get lift off oversteer. So if you're going into a turn and you feel, hey, I'm not quite hitting the apex, and you turn a little bit more and you lift off the throttle to try to get the front wheels to turn in. It's the worst thing you can possibly do because you got to preempt that corner with a Porsche because all the weight's out the back. So the minute you lift off, what you're doing is transferring the weight to the front, and the back has where all the weight is, right, is just going to rotate around. Now, even then, with a Porsche, who they used to call it the Widowmaker, the old Porsches. Have you seen the video of the
It's the yellow
what do you
bird,
call
right?
it? The yellow bird
Yep.
driving around the Nordschleife? It's fucking sideways, man. It's completely sideways the whole time. This is not these cars do not fucking spin on a circle for no reason. This doesn't happen. The cars want to go straight. And you know with circuit racing, right?
Yep.
You know how to pull it in, you know how to oversteer. You can tighten your turn with oversteer. You can do that intentionally. It's completely fine. Let's get the back out and
Yeah,
get the
it's
front tucked in.
the degree of yaw is basically directly proportionate to how much you put down the throttle, and you can pull it
Yeah,
back just
exactly.
as easy as you can kick it out even further.
Exactly, and you can kick it out further because the thing doesn't spin on a dime. It should not, unless it's horribly set up. It should be something that you can control, and you can generally control it with a little bit of throttle modulation and steering input, and that's the point. So that's what we did with Shift, and I feel, and this is the crazy. You're going to think I'm crazy here, but I feel that Shift 2 was more realistic than GTR 2.
You might be right about that in some regards. Like the squishiness of the tire is really tangible in the Madness Engine games. The tires don't feel squishy in some of the older ISI based stuff, and that's important
Yeah,
because rubber's squishy.
we had an issue with that. We actually went so that was one of the pandering to input responses that we had when we realized that when we softened the tires, we allowed the player to have much more fun, and I think that's the key point of a game that is not a hardcore simulation, is to give people some fun. And the whole point of Need for Speed is fun, and being part of that franchise, yes, we did pander to an extent. We did soften the tires. It's exactly what we did. Actually, you nailed it.
So we're essentially running super soft tires in all the Shift games. They're softer
That's
than they should be.
exactly what we did. Yes.
Okay, easy enough.
We put a multiplier in for the softness of the tires, and yeah, and that worked for the mass market. But the underlying engine at that point, we had our own brush engine that was designed by Eero Pichalainen.
Yeah, that name's familiar.
Yeah. Eero worked for us for 4 years. He's the guy that did Richard Burns Racing.
Yep.
Richard Burns Rally. Sorry, I think is the name of it. Yeah. Sadly missed. Great guy, fantastic driver. Not necessarily the most friendly human being in the world, but he was a great driver. And I did meet him in person, and he was fucking focused, man. This guy was hardcore. He was absolutely on the ball. He didn't deviate from what he saw the circuit in his head before he went for a drive. So if you tried to talk to him before it, he had nothing but that whole. It wasn't a circuit; it was a point to point. But he had nothing but that in his head, and he was rolling with that. And he was using pace notes just to have that in his head. So yeah, he was an interesting guy. But shame he was lost to cancer. Yeah.
And it was not very long after his game came out.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, and it was a great piece of work. I think it's still one of the best rally games ever. So we managed to get Eero, and we pulled him in, and he wasn't the guy. I've been knocked a little by saying I think we have the best off-road physics in some of the work that we've done. The latter work, probably.
People said P Cars 2 was criminally underrated when it came to rallycross cars.
I think so as well.
Yeah.
I think so as well. I think we had it absolutely nailed, because people don't realize when you got a ton of gravel and the rear wheels are sliding across that gravel on a rear-wheel drive car, of course, they started to grip. They push the gravel to the side and they create a sidewall. And we actually simulated that. So we simulated a sidewall building up from the gravel being moved from the tire, and then you got more grip.
So almost like a physical dynamic track surface like you'd see in motocross games, because a couple motocross games have been doing that. That same...
Yeah, exactly.
I forget what they call it.
Exactly.
They call it, it's not deformation, but it kind of is. But, so we essentially simulated that. You just didn't see it visually.
It is surface deformation.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's surface deformation, which varies the grip available from the tire, and the tire will push against the sidewall of gravel, and it will give you like, let's say, a yaw straightening effect, a yaw mitigation effect. I think is probably a better way of putting it. Um, and that's what we had, and it was all in there, man. I mean, the tire modeling. I can't wait to see what Project Cars 4 actually delivers, because I'm not part of it anymore. But I set the ship in motion. I pointed it out and said, here's the end destination. Let's get there. And it's fucking hardcore sim. That's what we're pushing. We're pushing for. And again, I have no input whatsoever. My son works for the company, and I last asked him how are things going with Project Cars 4, and he said to me, "I don't know, because I'm working for Codemaster, so I don't even know from my own son, who is in the marketing group." So there you go. I have no
Here's
idea.
here's a really interesting question, because I mean, there's even people in our chat commenting right now saying they really love the dirt feel in P-Cars 2. Were there ever any plans to do
Well,
like a P-Cars rally offshoot or like an off-road based game?
100%. That was one of my key aims, was to focus on the rally. What I've just explained.
Yeah.
There are look. Here's what most people do with a rally game. They have a very basic tire system, and they dial down the grip.
Yep.
That's what they do.
That
So
sounds
here's
right.
mud, and it has this much grip, and you stick in a figure. And here's gravel, and it has this much grip, and you stick in a figure.
Yep.
Bullshit. We didn't do that. We went way, way, way beyond that. We as I said to you before, explaining the yaw
Yep.
mitigation system that was in there, and it wasn't a false system. It was based on the amount of side slip, the amount of grip, the amount of rotational slip from the tires, how that would actually affect the micro gravel, or based on the surface content. Same with dry mud. Same with all of that stuff. We had it right there, and then we carried, like, if we were on dry mud driving into a tarmac area, we carried that dry mud on the surface of the tires, and we had that fully simulated. So people massively underestimate Project Cars 2. I think we nailed something really, really special with it. And yeah, it's unfortunately it it only sold 3.5, 4 million copies.
So how
So
how far along was this rally game in development? Was this an idea, or was it like you had working cars and tracks?
uh, we had a rally game concept from about 3, 4 years ago,
Okay.
with a full rally circuit. But it was effectively tarmac based at that point, because we knew, and I again, I don't, some guys think, hey, Ian Bell says their off road, their gravel physics are great, and it's bullshit. Well, they're wrong.
You know, I feel like I
They're
remember testing this back in the day. We had a couple cars and locations, various cars locations. I think we had like some sort of Pro 4 truck. I remember the rally stage. I think we had like autograss. Does autograss sound right?
mhm.
Where it was like running circles in
Yep,
the field. Very
autographs is
very
what it
similar. It's
was.
like UK oval racing. It's not banger racing. It's like proper racing where you're not allowed contact, or it's UK stock car racing. And there was something
Yep.
else. I think we had some sort of sprint car in it, but it was like very early stages of development. And what ended up happening with it? Did the funders just say no?
No, it wasn't the case of the funders. It was the case of the big corporate.
Okay.
So yeah, and I can't go into that.
Yeah, it's just how it is, right?
Sorry. Yeah, yeah, yep, yep. You want to survive. You want to pay your staff. You know, you need the income. You effectively have to pander to certain inputs that are more marketing based than what we would say is passion based. And I want to get back to passion based. I got to wait another 8 months, I believe. Hold on, where are we? January. Yeah, I got 8 months until I can explode again.
Here's an interesting
And I'm going
question.
to.
What other stuff was on the back burner that never saw the light of day? Like I'm talking like all throughout the company's history, so you can go back like 10, 15 years. Like what was there anything interesting you worked on that just never saw a release?
Oh, hundreds, man. I mean, it's such a great team. Our head of physics, now technical director, Steve Dunn, absolute genius. This guy, from the age of, what was he, 17, 18, uh, I don't think he'd done his degree at this stage. He blind wrote Virus, which was let's say a sales project for shipping the latest BBC computer, which was God, I forget the name of the BBC computer. What was it called? Can't remember. Anyway, it was a follow up to the BBC Micro, and it was RISC based. Um, so they had a RISC chip in it, and they were over the moon. And they said, "Here we go, and here's this fantastic game virus. No one can ever write this on the current systems." And then he took a Spectrum, a ZX Spectrum 48K, and completely blind rewrote it, and did exactly what they had on this latest new 16-bit, not 8-bit. What the fuck was the name of it? Oh, I can't remember. Sorry. Anyway, so yeah, we're talking 20 years ago, and I'm an old man now. But anyway, so yeah, so that's our technical director. The guy's a freaking genius. We have Jed Keaveney, right?
Yep, I remember
This
him.
guy, he wrote the first ever RPG. I mean, Heimdall, right? So you go back, we have people. I mean, I remember meeting Jed, and I showed up in a silver Ferrari to try to impress him, and he was like the most down-to-earth guy, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing in a Ferrari?" I brought him to a fancy hotel in Canary Wharf and set him up, and he was like, "Mate, where's the work? What are we doing?" He didn't give a shit about any of that flash. He's one of the smartest coders I've ever came across. Ran his own company. There's still some of his code, I believe, in FIFA.
Wow.
So let me put it that way. And this guy's a genius, and so he's our, I believe he's chief technology officer, I believe. Anyway, great people, absolutely great people, and I managed to find. When I say find them, they actually came to me because they were excited by this notion of not being part of a big corporate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, you've got to balance that against the fact that you need to pay your mortgage, you need to put your kids to school, you need to start looking towards a college fund. Where's that all going to come from? And it's all great being an independent and laissez-faire and free. But hey, at the end of the day, man, this world works on money, and I'm with all of the guys. They're great people, and I completely respect them. And they're the ones who made me what I am now. Who's the guy who's listed on IMDb as the producer or director of about 17, 18 games, with an average of 83%. That's pretty decent. So I'm proud. They've done it. It wasn't me. I'm an entrepreneur. That's what I am. They're the ones with the skill. I used to code, used to be able to, but that was in the old days, and it was 8-bit. It was 6510, 6502 initially, but 6510 later, Commodore 64, and I did some coding, and I was decent at it. But no, these guys are everyone I employed was much better at their job than I could possibly be.
So how did you get into this shit?
Sorry?
How did you get into this shit, into starting a development team? Like, what does that process look like? Because I think you guys started out as a mod team for, what was that, F1 Challenge? Talk about those days, because, like, how do you become the head of a studio?
F1 Challenge. You got a great memory, or you've done great research, Austin. So that was F1 2001.
Yes. It was a few years before the challenge game.
Yep. And we decided, so we're talking 21 years ago. Jesus Christ, I'm getting old. And we decided, let's turn this into something else. And now, how do we do that? And we didn't have access to the code. We didn't have anything. So I called up Jean and I said, can I rent your license? And he said, well, I don't know. Well, what can you pay? And I made him an offer, which I didn't have any money for, by the way.
Okay, how does that work? That's a story in itself.
Well, okay, so what I'd done is I called up. We had made a mod at this point.
So you're part of like a community mod team, like an AC, how they have just like modding groups, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we'd made a mod that was based on Fiat GT.
Yep.
So that was our first mod, and we made that mod effectively using just their released product
Yep.
and varying what we could without access to the source code. So we had no access to the source code, and we created, I think it was called Fiat GT, if
Yep.
I
That's
recall
right.
rightly, and this
Yep.
was 2001. And it was a modification of so they called it a total conversion mod. We were called mod of the century. So if you type in mod of the century GTR, Fiat GT something or GTR, you'll find it on Google. And it was like, hold on, there's a little bit of traction here. This could be good. So my old business brain got working, and I decided, oh, fuck it, let's do something. So I started calling up these Fiat GT teams, and I said, "You're in a game that we're making. We're shipping for free. It's online. It's so." So they started calling me. I started talking to about three or four of them about making it into a commercial product. I then got a call from Stefan Rattel, and he's the guy who runs and owns the brand. And he said, we need to have a meeting. So I
An
believe we
SRO
were.
is the guy behind this. That's who's running the sanctioning body for current GT racing is Stefan Rattel. That's
Yes, that was the
SRO.
guy I met
Yep.
way back then. And I met him, let's say, in not the most auspicious of circumstances. So he had this beautiful trailer at the Fiat GT place in Magny-Cours in Nevers. And I went to his trailer and he said, "Do you know you've just breached every single copyright law in the world?" And I went, "Sorry." And he said, "And you haven't paid for it?" And I said, "Sorry." And he said, "But you know what? You've given us so much coverage. So we've been
Oh, where'd you go? Oh my God, did we lose him at the most important part of the story? Oh my goodness. Hold on. We're finishing this story. Where did Ian go? There we go. Okay.
Austin.
It dropped out, but we're good.
Was I just talking to myself for a while?
It dropped out for like 20 seconds. So you're in Stefan Rattel's trailer. He's chewing you out for breaking every copyright law in the world.
Yep.
And he's like,
Yep.
but.
He's giving me hell.
But.
I'm sitting there with Henry Groos. And Henry Groos is the guy who ran the Optima.
The Optima Viper, yep.
The Optima Viper, that was it. Thank you for helping there. And he said to me, "You've breached every copyright law in the world." And I thought, "Oh, fuck, I'm in shit here. I thought I was here to do some business." And transpired, he said to me, "You've given us so much coverage. We're going to let that lie. Do you want to make it official?" To which I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So yeah, that's what happened. And between FIA GT Mod, that's where GTR1 came from, which was me sitting in Stefan Rattel's, let's call it a double wide. I don't know what the hell he had, but it was something awesome looking. He was we were lying in bunks. He had a double bed, so, and an extremely attractive assistant. So I like that. He was married, but she was, quote, his assistant. Anyway, so Stefan was an interesting man, and he saw the benefits of the coverage that we could bring to him.
And that's essentially a partnership in sim racing that's still today, because, I mean, ACC is the SRO GT3 sanctioning body. He's still in this, you know? His company and his cars are still in this.
Yes, I know. Stefan's still part of it. So I was there back in 2002, 2001 and a half.
That sounds correct.
2002. Somewhere back there. And sitting down with Stefan and having a chat. And he looked me straight in the face and he said, "You know what?" And poor Henrik, by the way, because Henrik has been amazing to me all of these years, right? Henrik Groos. He's the guy who said, "Okay, I'll bring the money and make this happen." Um, and we had nothing. So we shipped GTR 1. My salary was €1,000 per month. That's that's what I earned as CEO. Uh, I got €1,000 a month. And to be fair, I was quite happy. I was doing a PhD. I was lecturing at 50 quid an hour. I had a £25,000 stipend per year, tax free. Uh, I was quite happy. There's an extra thousand a month coming in. And my dream is going to come true. And that was down to Henry Bruce. So I have to give him full credit for that. But Stephen Rattel looked me directly in the face and he said, "You know what? I believe in you." And for some reason, Austin, even though I'm a shit, people believe in me. And and yeah, uh, I think it's because I might be a shit, but I'm shit. I'm an honest shit. You know what I mean?
That makes
If you get
sense.
the concept. So I can be harsh. I can be tough on people. I can vary my personality. I'm generally myself. I don't give a shit about anything. Never have since 2003 when I had too much money to care. And
What does
it's
that
like,
look like? Because I know people are going to want some stories about that. What does too much money to care look like?
well, let me explain. I can put this in an extremely focused manner. I'm sitting in one bedroom. That's what I'm living in because that's all I could afford. I'm doing a PhD in human computer interaction at Bournemouth with this single bedroom in a shithole uh, in in Bournemouth, and all of a sudden, uh, Activision started appearing, Electronic Arts started appearing, Codemasters started appearing, and they're coming into my bedroom, and I'm sitting with one room. Well, that's all I got. Well, I got around the corner. There was a kitchenette,
Okay.
and there was a toilet and a shower, so I was able to wash. I don't want to make this, too harsh. Um, so they would look at me and say, "Okay, can we go to your office now?" Because they'd seen we actually sent them the CDs back then,
Yep.
because you couldn't send things online. There was too much data
The
and
whole
not
like
enough bandwidth.
FTP file transfer stuff was just not a thing yet.
It wasn't fast enough. I
We
mean,
didn't
it did
have
exist.
FileZilla back then.
It did exist, but it was for very small, very poor quality porn at that stage. So anyway, we we got them into the. I say we. I was sitting alone, and they would come into my one bedroom and look at me and think, "Can we go to the office?" And I said, "This is my office," and I would point to a 17-inch cathode ray screen and say, "It's in there." And they said, "What the fuck are you talking about?" I said, "The team's all in there. They're all in. They're all online. That's how we communicate. That's how we've made it." They said, "Look, we played the game. There's no way you could possibly have made it." I said, "We did. That's how we made it.
So
It's
remote
there."
work before remote work was normalized. Not even just with COVID, but like before it was a big thing in the tech industry.
Oh, it didn't exist. I mean, I don't want to big myself up excessively, but I created remote work. I mean, that's it, and that's a reality. There was no, you could work remotely for a few days, but you had massive bases that you would go to where everyone was
Yep.
sitting in an office together. Um, we were people back then. We only had about 14, 15 of us, but we were from 8 different countries already, and we were all working together online, and that was it. That's so we
So,
used decent off the shelf products. Like, you remember the old Microsoft Messenger from the early days?
oh yeah,
Uh,
MSN.
yeah, MSN. When it first came in with the option to transfer files, it was
Yep.
like, hey, hold on, this is heaven. And then we went to standard online forums. We got the forum software. We would pay a little bit, which I would pay, which I couldn't afford, but I paid it. And I thought, hey, we're going to make something here. This is working. And all of a sudden, everyone was working online together. We couldn't afford Perforce in those days, but Perforce became what we were doing back in the old days. We would just communicate live and say, we're currently working on this area. Don't step on my toes.
Okay.
And, and that's how we did it. It was just live comms on MSN. and
Because there
then a
wasn't the
forum based
Microsoft
system.
Teams infrastructure that there is nowadays, or Confluence or Jira. It really was just
Oh
sign on the
God,
chat room.
no! There was nothing. It was a chat room and a forum, and
What
that's
are
how
the
we made
logistics? I
PTR.
mean, you've been doing this from the start. What are the logistics of remote work like that when everyone's on a different schedule? You have guys in Canada, guys in Australia, guys in Europe, all working on a product. What are some of the issues that arise with that?
Um, very, very little, actually, surprisingly, because everyone was extremely motivated. We had this, this, this real core desire to be. We saw we were the Davids against Goliath. You know, the Glass were the
Okay.
big boys. We were the little guys, and we had this massive desire to show them what we could do, and let's do it. And you know what? Until reviews started coming in from GTR1, which you can check online, I think it's 86% or something. Um, it was like, is this going to work? Are we actually going to do it? But I just went out in a win, and I just thought, fuck it. You know, if you don't risk, there's no reward. You gotta put yourself out there. And so I got the team together, talked to all of those that I could, which transpired to be 3 people from the whole team because they were close to me. Talked in face to face, that is. Our communication online was perfect. I started being able to read between the lines. I am a psychologist. I was a psychologist before that. And I was able to read subtle nuances of what, people's motivation, how they were feeling from type. And was able to, let's say, comfort them or mitigate any issues they had, and subtly encourage them. And it worked, man. That's where we came from. And we didn't have an office until shift one. We didn't have an
Wow.
office.
Like not a physical location that you could,
Nope,
send investors to.
not a
Wow.
single office until shift one. And the only reason we got an office is because the purveyors of the consoles, Microsoft and Sony, insisted that we had a secure office, that we would have dev kits. So we couldn't get access to dev kits without having an office. So
Wow.
I bought this dungeon. Didn't buy it. I rented this dungeon in a place not far from my home, just up the street. I thought, hey, I'll make it close, right? Um, we rented this dungeon up the street, and that's where we had everyone making. Well, actually, that's when EA came in, saw our dungeon, looked, and thought, "Holy fuck!" And I could see on their faces, Patrick Sutherland's face. Sorry, that was an accident to say he had 2 faces. And and yeah, I could see him looking and thinking, "What the fuck have we got into here?" But then they played the game, and that would change everything, because Patrick's first words when he played it was, "This is fucking good. This is fucking good." That's exactly what he said, exactly how he said it, with exactly that intonation. And that's how we ended up getting big money from Electronic Arts. And I ended up buying a house in the country. I ended up giving the team good money. We started getting proper salaries. Everyone was looked after. Yeah, look, at this point, I was HR director. I was director of development. I was director of design. I was head of HR. I think I've mentioned already. I was every. I mean, I wrote the contracts for the employment. I couldn't afford a lawyer, so everything was just me making shit up on the fly and trying to be as honest and decent as I could be. And we got there, and we employed these amazing people, because, quite ironically, Electronic Arts closed down a lot of really good studios in the UK.
Yeah, and they did that for about a period of about 15 years. There's a nice little infographic on it showing the years they shut down companies and what occurred
So
during
we
that
got
time
them.
frame. So just
We
tons
got
of
them
free
from
agents on the market.
Cheltenham. Yes, we got them. So they came to me, and they had this notion, this let's say internal desire to, let's let's be the Davids against the Goliaths,
Okay.
and that's what we were, and that's what I always wanted it to remain. The problem is when you got so much money coming in and so much pressure to create something that is a mass market, multi-platform game, you slowly deviate from that. But at the same time, you're now supporting your staff properly. You're paying them proper wages. You're giving them a decent life. They're still able to work from home, and that was a fight I had my whole life, by the way. Why aren't they sitting in the office? I said, well, you think someone is tied to a fucking seat because they're sitting in the office? And then the next question was, why aren't they full employees, or why are they all consultants? And I said, do you think calling someone an employee ties them to a seat? People are here because they want to be, and that's why I want them to be here. So it's a mutually beneficial situation. But what is your problem? And of course, I sort of, let's say, went fairly free form with employment law, etc. Yeah, it was quite interesting.
One thing that's really
It was a fun
unique
time.
about how GTR succeeded in the sim racing environment is that the actual FIA GT series it's based on was not super popular at the time. It didn't have like a major North American or worldwide TV contract.
We made them popular.
Yep.
We made them popular, and this was what Stefan Mattel saw. So that's why he forgave me for completely breaching all copyright protocols. And Stefan Mattel saw the response. They saw the early stage online response, and they saw that this was very interesting, and this could, look, what's happening now is well, what happened after is we got things like BMW M3 Challenge came to us as a payment from BMW just to flog the car,
Yeah.
right? Just to make it a marketing exercise.
So that was like an advert game that they paid for, hey?
Well, that's exactly what happened, yeah. And Stefan Mattel saw this, and he saw it early, and I flogged that to him. That was to take some credit for myself, which I've done the whole time, but I'll continue to. Is I told him, the future world is online. The future of the world is how many hits are you getting? How many clicks are you getting? You want to flog a series, then you need it out there, and you need it out to the younger people because they grow up, because time passes, and they want to be part of this, and they want to watch this, and maybe they want to buy these cars, which is what I flogged to BMW as well. And you've got to get the young people in because there's a new generation coming through, and they're going to be old enough to be, and some of them are going to be successful enough to be able to purchase this product at some point. So let's go. Hmm.
And that's a very rare game not a lot of people have played because I don't believe it's on Steam at the moment. It's this like free demo that genuinely people do not
It
know a
was
whole lot about.
it was the biggest downloaded free game ever in the year and all of the years previous when it was downloaded.
Yeah, that sounds
So
about right. I do remember that.
we had more downloads than any other game in history, uh, but we were way ahead of the game. You understand? We were at the point where there wasn't really the bandwidth. People didn't really have the connective
Yep.
power to be able to download something that big. But we were there from the earliest stages, and this is what I like to do, Austin. I like to preempt where the world is going and where the motivations are going, and then get in there before anyone else. That's that's what I like to do. That's my main motivation in life, and that's what gives me pleasure. I did it with WMD. I mean, it was the world's first paid mass market game development system. That was the world's first. We did crowdfunding before there was crowdfunding. I was there before Kickstarter,
Yeah,
so
yeah, Kickstarter was a
I'm proud of
relatively
that.
new thing. I want to say it rolled out in 2014 or 15, whereas the original P-Cars was first pitched in, I believe, 2012, and it got up pretty soon thereafter.
Yeah, exactly. I think they saw my idea and thought, "Hey, this is fun." But the problem is they didn't actually pay anyone back. And the second problem is that the FCA and FSA, uh, as they changed their name, um, they came to the conclusion that it was a mass market investment scheme. And and to
Yes, I
me, I
remember
said to
that.
them, it's normal, right? Because
Yep.
publishers normally take like 90% of your income. They'll write you up to 20%, 25%. You'll get 25% royalties. The problem is they charge those royalties against all of the costs. So, for example, and then they write that in the contract. So we'll charge royalties against costs before you get royalties. So you get 25% of what's left after they've removed their costs. They have no limit to what they can actually allocate to costs. So for us, which I can speak about because it's way beyond non-disclosure agreement, they allocated 120 million to one producer. Um, so we ended up with no royalties. We earned zero royalties from Need for Speed Shift and Shift 2.
That's not cool. That's a
No,
lot of money
no,
you
it's
missed out
not.
on because those games sold amazing.
Yes, they did. The Shift 1 sold 7 million copies. Shift 2, I'm not sure because at that stage we were going through a breakup and we didn't get all the information that we would have liked. But the reality is, a lot of people made a lot of money, but we didn't. And we made it. We had one producer allocated to us. And when he came to the first meeting, the first thing he said was, I'm off for a summer break for 2 months. So it was like, okay. And I think my exact words were, I'll see you when we hit Alpha. Um, so, yeah. So that's the situation. And that's what I sold to the FSA when I was sitting in their offices in Canary Wharf in London, in the financial district. And I said, I think this is unfair. And I think I should be able to make a game and give this money to the people who actually invest into it. And it transpired that 372% was paid back to everyone who put a penny into that game. That's Project Cars 1, by
Yep.
the way.
How much did some of the bigger investors make?
I'll not mention names, but
Okay.
the biggest investor was 300,000 euro as a single person. And they made 371% of that. So it was over a million.
That's pretty
Um,
fucking good.
Yeah, well, within a year and a half, yeah, that's a damn good return. if you, yeah, if you can give me that, I'll be happy. I think people are over the moon these days for 6% returns. So 371. Well, to be fair, over a year and a half. So you gotta divide that slightly. But
And the
yeah,
FSA was upset with that.
here's the thing. I actually think they loved the concept. So when I sold it to them, I'm sitting in their offices. I'm sitting with all these lawyers. I have my lawyer there. I'm arguing my case to the FSA, which, they could have shut the thing down, but they didn't. They didn't. They said, we trust you and we'll let you finish it, but don't do it again. Naughty
That's the
boy,
best kind of
you've done it
punishment.
once, don't do it again. And I said, okay, so we'll finish this one. And because I turned up with the machine, with the game running on it, with what was it? One of these powerful laptops at the time. Um, and I showed them the game and I said, here's where we are. And they said, well, it looks fucking fantastic. And I said, yeah. And that's what we're going to ship on the market. And they said, okay, we'll let you do it. You can finish it. We'll keep an eye on you. We'll see if people are paid, blah, blah, blah. And they got 371 to 372% returns.
So it's almost like
Uh,
the FSA was surprised it was such a competent, like program. They expected that it would
well,
be unravel like Theranos did the United States, and instead it's like the guy walked in with a functioning game he could show, and it actually looked, really exciting, and suddenly it was like, oh,
that's a good analogy. That's a very good
okay, you follow
analogy.
the
I
Theranos
think,
shit too?
yes, of course. Yes,
That's a
I know
fucking
all about
ride.
Theranos. Yes, just prick my finger and I'll make 475 different readings from this micro piece of
So
blood. Yeah,
they
what a load.
expected that software development didn't work like that, and then you showed them that it did, and they're like, oh.
Well, that's it. I showed it to them. So I sat down, stuck the game on, and said, "Here's where we are with the investment of the people who trusted me and put the money into it. What do you want to do? Shut that down and give them zero, or let me finish? Because I don't need any more money. I've got enough." shut that down, give them zero, or let me finish and give them all of the profits that would normally go to a publisher. And they had a good old think about it, and they thought, okay, you can finish. And then they explained, they said, Ian, look, it is actually a mass investment scheme. And when you do that, there is a risk of other people coming in and doing the same thing. But they'll be bullshit artists. This was the exact words of the guy, by the way. I won't mention his name. And he said, we can't open the doors to that level of risk for the mass market. But we see what you've done. We see what's there. We believe in it. And we'll let you finish it. So that was sold horribly on places like Eurogamer, FCA investigating Ian Bell, blah, 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 all this bullshit. It was bullshit. The FSA, back then was FSA, they're now FCA, so I use them interchangeably. But they trusted me from the earliest days, and they let me run a mass investment scheme. Like mildly masked. But that's what it was.
Well, you couldn't really call it a scheme because scheme has a negative connotation. You just had an investment program and it worked.
Scheme shouldn't have really a negative connotation. It's you know, it's a normal English word. It's something. It just means you know, a procedure that we're running through here that we've set up, and what we set up is something to actually empower the people who were paying for the game, and they loved this idea. The FSA back then loved the idea. I said, why should these publishers? Because I was able to come there with all of the information from Need for Speed Shift. You know, we sold 6 million copies of Shift 1, and when you multiply 6 million by the rolling rate of profit at that point was $33. So you can do the multiplications there. And I mean that's profit. $33.
So $33 off every sold game.
That's what EA told me. So that's $33 multiplied by 6 million. Now, don't get me wrong, some of that may have been at reduced price later, but regardless, we're talking about an awful lot of money. We spent 10 million, 12 million making the game.
Wow.
So
yeah, so no wonder you guys were pissed that you didn't really get to see any of the.
We didn't it's not really. We didn't get any fucking. We didn't get a single penny.
So you basically woke up one day and discovered, hey, that 180 million that you made, or that you should have made, all went to someone else's pocket, and went, what the fuck?
Yes.
And
yes.
And it led to a very messy breakup during the days of Shift 2, I presume.
Well, I had mild arguments during Shift 2, but we didn't have any other options. So. You got to imagine, it's okay saying, yeah, you've done this, you've done that, you shouldn't have signed on to that, you shouldn't have signed their agreement. That's easier to speak about when you've got 108 people who are relying on you to provide them an income every month. It's great. You know, that's easy to say, oh, you shouldn't have signed it. I fucking had to sign it. If I didn't sign it, people weren't being paid. So that's it. I signed the agreement for Shift 2. I thought I had a fantastic agreement for Shift 3. And 2 weeks before it shipped, they cut it.
Wait, back up a second. There was a Shift 3?
Oh yeah. Shift 3 was signed 10, 11 months before the release of Shift 1.
Wow.
Sorry, Shift 2.
So that would have came out 2012 to 2013. Probably 2013.
Yes.
Was there anything different about it? Do you remember vaguely what this looked like?
It was even more hardcore.
Okay.
It was going to take what we'd done with Shift 2, improve the graphics greatly, improve the gameplay in multiple ways, and it was going to go more hardcore with the physics. Not hardcore as in you're going to spin out every corner, but let's, in Shift 2, we put in something that we called like aero assistance. So when the car got sideways,
side force,
we would apply an aero force to let's say,
the dirt rally does that too.
Yeah.
Increased side force, probably a multiplier.
Yeah. So we stuck in a multiplier to do that, and to make it easier for people, and so the car didn't spin around so easily, So Shift 3 was going to be amazing because we were going to go hardcore because we were coming from a position of strength. I mean, the games were selling like hell. But then Patrick Sutherland came on board, and when I say he came on board, he started talking. He was on board from the start. Patrick is the guy who gave us Shift. We wouldn't be here without him, right? But
Okay.
at the same time, my opinion is he's an asshole, and I stand by that. That's my opinion. So he called me up 2 weeks before, after pushing the hell of it. We shipped Shift 2 4 months before it was supposed to be shipped. Because they called us up about 4 or 5 months before that and said, we're not going to be able to ship this game that we're planning from Black Box out of Canada.
Yep.
And it's not going to hit the market, and we need to have this, Q3, Q4 release.
Yes, because Black Box, that would have been NFS The Run that would have came out in the fall of 2011, so you had to ship in the spring.
Exactly.
I remember that. Yep.
You're right there. So we were told, make the game 4 months earlier. Now, you understand when you're about 8 months, 9 months into development of something, and you have everything planned.
Yep.
Being told to ship it that much earlier it's insane. But hey, we focused, we consolidated, we reduced the scope to an extent, and we said, fuck it, we're going to do it. We're going to make this happen. We're going to show them how good we are. So just before that, we'd signed a contract for Shift 3. That contract came with certain stipulations, and those stipulations, the key stipulation actually was that we would not talk to any other publishers, not arrange any other work, because we were completely independent. And we would not organize any other work, and we would sign Shift 3, and they paid us $1.5 million as a down payment for Shift 3, which I gave to the guys as bonuses, and I took $100K from myself. And yeah, I mean, I looked after myself as well. Yeah, I'll be straight. But we looked after the team, we paid people, and 2 weeks before we were due to start Shift 3, I got a call from Patrick Sutherland saying, "Hi Ian, how's it going?" I said, "Great." He said, "On the line is a couple of other people, and we're not going to do Shift 3. And I said, okay, so what are we doing instead? He said, "Nothing." And I said, "What?" "But we've signed it." They said, yeah, but if you check the contract, there's a clause that we can actually cancel. Thought, oh my God. Yes, there is, but I mean, we're doing great work here. We've just shipped the game 4 months early, which got mid-80s reviews,
And at the time, it was a true competitor to Forza and Gran Turismo, because Forza was not on the PC yet, wouldn't be for a while. And Gran Turismo, if you recall, the reason Shift came about, the first one, was because Gran Turismo 5 on PS3 got delayed. So you beat them to the market, and now you had established...
We nearly killed ourselves to get that game out.
Wow.
4 months early. We nearly killed ourselves. We went to the extent we were... I don't do crunches. I never did in any of my companies. And I said to the guys, look, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to crunch. There's no way around it. We're going to have to put in extra hours. There's no way around it. I apologize. And we're going to have to do it. It's the only way we can get this out. And we need to, because we have Shift 3 signed, and it's crucial for our future, and the blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we delivered that, and then we were told 2 weeks. And by the way, they pushed the hell out of us towards the end. There were 14,000 micro bugs that they found. Wow. That we had to work through. We fixed them all, and I don't know if you're aware of how it is working through a bug process, but it's pretty much hell. There's no pleasure involved, and the staff they work their balls off. I don't have any hair, but I take my hat off to them and say thank you to the staff for getting there, because they almost all killed themselves to ship 2, that is. And then boom, 2 weeks before, Mr. Patrick Sutherland, with a smile in his intonation, "Yeah, I'm not going to make that 12 million, 15 million investment in Shift 3. I think it's too much. Now, you understand these games are making hundreds of millions.
Yes. Because, I mean,
So,
180 million profit off of Shift Game, he's crunching numbers that, like, don't mean anything to anybody. Like, that's just, like, stupid amounts of money. And he's splitting hairs over it.
And then being told, just like that, and then being offered, and if any of your team need a job, I said, well, look, my company's finished. We're done. If that's what you're doing, we're finished. You've destroyed us. There's 105 staff here, and we're finished. We're done. And he said, yeah, if any of them, you know, the good ones need a job, tell them to send us an email.
Which, of course, they probably wouldn't answer. Like, the company's huge at that point.
No, they would answer the good emails, believe me, from the good stuff.
Okay.
So that got my back up because I'm Irish. You know, we're a little bit sort of, I don't know what the American analogy would, the Canadian American continent, well, maybe Mexican in our, you know, we're like, fuck you, we're gonna fight back. And I didn't tell my wife. She found out later. I remortgaged the only property we had at that point, and put all the money into the company at a crazy 20% return loan, and said, let's go, we'll make something ourselves. And that's where Project Cars started.
If you could do the WMD process again, even though it was wildly successful, what would you improve upon? That's a wild question, I know. How do you improve on 371%?
How would improve on 371%?
Make it 471.
If I could make that again for everyone, I would do it. But here's the thing: I have a plan. Let me put it this way: I have a cunning plan. Now,
another one.
I have a cunning plan that I cannot divulge at this stage because I'm on a non-compete. But I have a cunning plan, and this cunning plan, in my opinion, is probably my best cunning plan ever. And I'm fucking motivated to make something awesome. And I can't do it for a while because EA were very kind to pay me 1 year of salary for doing no work. And I am just ready when that year ends to explode onto the market with something very interesting. And you might be interested yourself as well.
Yeah, I kind of need some work after this whole incident.
Incident.
I mean, he got arrested a couple days ago, so no crazy emails to the company. Hey?
Jacoby?
Yep.
Got arrested. Is
Yep.
that who you're talking about right now?
Yep.
Oh, that guy's crazy. He's sorry, I shouldn't say that glib. As a psychologist, he has certain issues. I think he has paranoid personality disorder. I'm of the opinion he needs some help, and he needs to be looked after. I don't think he needs to be incarcerated. I think he needs to be looked after.
Yeah, the justice system will take over in that regard. They'll probably recognize at some point when it goes to trial and they charge him.
You'd be amazed how poor the free psychological advice is. Really.
Especially in the States. You'd be amazed
how poor it is. The state provided psychological advice is absolutely pathetic. I don't know what it's like in Canada. Sorry, I can't state, but I can say absolutely in London, in UK, it's pathetic.
Is that kind of why you're running your own therapy program you want to start up, or you have started up already?
Well, I don't want to start up. It's actually started up already.
Okay.
So
is that kind of why you got into it, though?
Well, it wasn't for Jacoby's reasons.
No, not for that reasons, but just realizing the systems are shit.
Yes. That was the key reason. It was because most people cannot afford, let's say, higher level, eloquent psychological care, and people who are able to very quickly establish where the issues are and to fix them. And I think I myself, I'm slightly, I don't think, I know, I'm OCD. I've had depressive episodes, severe depressive episodes. I have anxiety issues occasionally; they come and go, and that's fine. That's psychological issues. It's like someone having a sore knee. You know, well, why there's a stigma associated with it. And to be fair, I think the stigma over the last few years has started to really decline.
That sounds
I
about right.
think people are now saying, let's look after this shit. This is our brain. Look, and it's organic. It's not you being a cuckoo person. It's because your serotonin, your dopamine, your norepinephrine, your glycine, your noradrenaline is out of sync. Let's fix things here. Your thought processes are out of sync. Let's fix things here, and we can do that. And you need an educated person, and I have 14, 15 years of study behind me and 3 PhDs and that I worked on. Didn't finish them all, but I did, and they're all on brain. That's what I've done, and I'm here to help people. So I'm actually doing a new doctorate uh, uh, in pure psychology, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast. So I'm here to help people. I plan to do it for free for people who have no money, and I plan to charge rich people an awful lot of money.
That's kind of how Canada's system operates, where if you do seek private counseling, you pay on a bell curve, basically, based on your current lifestyle. They ask you a bunch of questions,
Yep.
and then that's on top of you can get free healthcare through our government, which is it's very hit or miss. If you find someone good, it works. If you find a doctor you click with or a therapist you click with, it's really good.
Well,
There
that's the
are,
point. I
yeah,
think Canada has always been enlightened in that area,
yeah.
Austin. I think Canada is way ahead of the US, which is purely I mean, I'm sorry, it's embarrassing what's happening in the US. It appears to me to be a mercenary capitalist system, and they don't care about anything about the people. They care about how much money they're making, and this is their key motivation. And I'm sorry, that's not why you should be getting into this area. Um, and okay, to be fair, people need to pay their bills, you know. Um, but I'm in the extremely lucky position where I have uh, stupid amounts of money, and I can look after people without having to charge them, and I'd be very happy to do that. So that's what I'm setting up. I have a group of psychologists already signed on in specific areas, very specific areas, and they're all absolute specialists in what they do, and I mean the best. So I want to look after as many people as I possibly can and grow this thing. So it's therapy global. It's not UK based. It's not Singaporean based where I live at the moment. It's for the world, and let's grow this, and let's get psychologists in who can do pro bono every other every other case, and that's where I'm aiming. And then we charge proper money for the people who actually do come in, and but we need the very best people so that we can motivate those who do have the money to actually pay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, how does a project like this get funded? Because like obviously you got to pay psychologists to be on the staff and overhead costs, right? Would you set
It's
that up
coming
like a
out of my
charity?
pocket at the moment.
That's out of your pocket. Okay.
Yeah, for now,
For now.
for
So
now.
there's a phase two.
But I see the future. I see the future. I'm a capitalist bastard. I'm not going to lie about it. That's what I am. Money is comfortable. Money gives me the option of giving to. It gives me the option of giving to charity. It gives me the option of looking after people who are struggling. It gives me the option of doing all the things that make me feel good. And people would say, well, it's potentially a little bit sort of, you know, is it altruism, or is it just you looking after yourself so you feel better? Um, but
It's probably
at the
altruism.
end of the day, I can cope with that. I can cope with the fact that yes, it does make me feel better as long as I'm helping other people, and and that's great. And if they're coming out of it beneficial and I feel better, then fuck it. It's a group beneficial situation, and to hell with it. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there's actually anything in altruism that is core. People do it to make themselves feel better, and that's what I'm doing. um, but I think that's actually a a noble thing. I don't think that's in any way negative.
No, and you're right, it is, especially because, like, at some point, you know, you get jaded when you buy the fifth Ferrari. You know, it's not as special as the first
Well,
one.
I've only got two, Austin,
There you go.
and I gave one of them to my daughter. So she's driving around Belfast in her new Ferrari. Well, it wasn't new. It's the 458. It's the one I love, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
The other shit.
there was a period where Ferrari somewhat jumped the shark with designs, but the 458 was really the last of, like, the mid 2000s to early 2010s, like, modern classic Ferraris.
Yes, and it's non-turbocharged.
Yeah.
And it revs to 9,250 RPM, and it's it sounds epic. It's that wonderful V8. It's absolutely amazing. It sounds fantastic. It just makes the best noises. And you don't need any more power than that. Who needs more than 500 brake horsepower in a light car?
Yeah, especially
I mean,
power to weight ratio when that's factored in.
Exactly, and they have the aluminium base. It's not a space frame. What's it called? Tub.
Yeah. The carbon tub.
It's
or
fairly.
Yeah.
It's fairly light, and it's a great car, man. So I gave it to my daughter. I gave my other car to my mom. I gave my houses. I'm just a giver. I love it, man. People think I'm a corporate asshole, but the reality is I have less money than anyone that's ever been corporate that I know, and I give it away, and it makes me feel happy, and I'll keep doing that. So, but when it comes to my new project, I'm absolutely going to fill my pockets. So, I'm down to my last 50 million, man.
Well, and you've always been an ambitious guy, and one of the really interesting projects that was only a few short years ago, you almost beat Google to entering the console market with the Madbox. I mean, you announced in January or February.
Oh my God, that was painful, man.
Painful?
We had, well, what happened? The Madbox was if I say so myself, I think a very interesting concept. And I had 3 Chinese backers who were coming in with hundreds of millions, hundreds each, millions. And they started hearing about real estate problems in China. And this was also the early stages of Corona starting to kick off as well. That came in about halfway through. And then we were blocked from Wuhan. So I'd met the guys that all agreed to it. They thought it was wonderful. We had the whole concept in place. We talked to AMD, who were going to come up with the graphics and the chip. I think they required 200 million to build enough. And yeah, that's where we were. And then one by one, the Chinese investors pulled out, and I ended up with nothing. So, yeah.
So just investors jumped ship, and that was around the time Google had announced. So there's potential that some went to the Google Stadia, which in itself ended up being, it didn't pan out.
A waste of time.
Yep.
And I said that from the start. And I said it to my old friend from Northern Ireland as well. The guy who made, what do you call him? Something the worm. What's the game?
Worms?
Earthworm Jim.
Oh, okay.
So if you go research Earthworm Jim, right?
Yep.
You'll find a Northern Irish guy.
And he was trying to get full bore on the Madbox, and you were just like, man, it's not going to happen. It's not going to pan out.
Yeah.
Like,
his name's David Perry. So he started working with this Gaika, what's it called?
Okay.
I forget the name exactly, but it was one of those online, let's feed the... Oh, you can see, David Perry. Okay, I just typed. Is a Northern Irish video game developer, by the way, with a completely perfect American accent. I don't know where that came from. No idea. This is what's called an Irish accent, ladies and gentlemen. But David Perry, I met him at one of these E3s or something like that, the CCCs, E3s, something. And I walked up, I said, David, and he went, hey, hello, man, how are you doing? And I said, where the fuck do you get that accent from? And he went, you're from Northern Ireland. And there was like a panic on his face. By the way, he's my age, basically. He's 54. He's not as good looking. He's slightly fatter. But anyway, he came up with Earthworm Jim. So, so I'll give him that. And he came into this this notion that we're going to ship games online with a live feed. You know what? I said from the start, look, guys, there's a thing called physics, right?
Yep.
It doesn't matter how fast your response is, but you cannot play a fucking first-person shooter online reading information from satellites. It's not going to work.
Yeah, like there's going to be input lag.
Yeah, of course. So you're going to hit the jump button, and it's going to take 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, whatever the best case scenario is. It's not going to work. And I told them all, it's not going to work. And I talked, and there are some chats with big companies that I won't go into, but told them all, it's not going to happen. Can't happen. There are physical limitations on the distance that the speed of light can actually move across the Earth. And here are the reasons why this is absolutely physically impossible. And you can't preempt this with algorithms. This is not going to work. And boom, it didn't work. But anyway, David Perry listed as Northern Irish game developer. David, if you're listening or if you ever listen to this podcast, fix your accent, man. You're from Northern Ireland, yeah?
We kind of have that here with people trying to be something they're not. I mean, Edmonton's a pretty big metropolitan city, and people think they're cowboys. It's bizarre.
Yeah, well, you know, they can wear a hat and put some guns on the side. I think guns are fairly free. And, well, actually, here's the weird thing about Canada. You don't shoot each other remotely as much as the US do, but I think you have a more free gun policy, right? Or am I?
It's pretty easy to obtain a firearm up here. Like my buddy's got a small gun collection, and like it wasn't anything difficult for him to obtain. Like you go to a class, you pay a couple $100, you got a gun.
So what's the difference? What's the difference, Austin? Why are they all killing each other in the U.S. and they're not in Canada?
The answer varies by region. I mean, in like South Central LA, it's because of the crack epidemic. So you have generations
yeah, of course. I mean,
on.
look, we can let's remove all of the let's say specific drug infested areas. What is the reason? Why are people in Canada not, you know, at top of the charts when you have much more free gun laws than the U.S.? There must be a reason for it. And this is something I've never been able to establish in my mind, because you're all the same people. I mean, you're all from multiple areas, multiple countries. You're multinational. What is the reason?
It could be our education system's a little better. Like
You think
I
you're
don't
being
I don't I
educated
don't have
in
stories
the
like
US?
inner city schools in Canada really don't exist. That's really it. You know, our schools
Okay,
don't.
and by inner city schools, you got to define that a little bit more specific.
We don't have like large swaths. Like you know how Detroit in the United States sometimes makes the news for just like almost uninhabitable areas of the city that people genuinely live in.
Oh, I've seen the videos. Yeah,
Cleveland's
they're
another one.
ridiculous.
Like places in Texas, places in the deep south. Like it's.
I've seen
Yeah.
Philadelphia. I've seen people driving down. I mean,
San
God,
Francisco. How disgusting their downtown is.
horrific.
We don't have that.
Look, here's the thing, Austin. I want to make this declaration. You know, I'm lefty, right?
Yeah.
You know this. You're aware that I'm very left in my politics.
Yes.
But I have to admit that I've seen a correlation between very left-leaning cities and homelessness. And when I say homelessness, people living in fucking tents and streets and taking drugs. And I want to work out what's the reason for that, because I'm a liberal and I don't get it.
Some of the policies are too extreme. They go too extreme into the left-leaning side of it. Like for example, in San Francisco, within the past year or two, I believe they stopped prosecuting shoplifters if they shoplift under $1,000. So anyone who's a career criminal or just
they take calculators to the shops. To me, that's a preposterous policy.
And that has a ripple effect, right?
What you're doing is effectively, you're encouraging.
Yeah, you've legalized shoplifting.
Well, you can't. Look. I'm of the opinion that too many people. Look, first of all, being put in jail for growing a herb and
Yes, that
maybe
was a major
selling a
problem
herb.
in the United States too.
I think
Because
that's
yeah,
preposterous. Okay, it should never happen. Should never happen. For me, crime is about theft. Yes, you're stealing someone's property. It doesn't matter if they're a multinational. It doesn't matter. It filters right down to small mama and papa shops who are, living on the goods they've got there, and you can't fucking steal them, man, because they're gonna run out of money and end up homeless themselves. It's preposterous. You cannot encourage that shit.
well, it's
Um,
policies like that, and other policies such as the safe injection sites working in tandem.
so they're actually encouraging. Well, I mean, is it like
We have safe
methadone to
injection sites
replace
here.
heroin?
Yeah, there's safe places to shoot up heroin.
No, I mean, like, Are they replacing methadone with like a treatment? Like, sorry, replacing heroin with a treatment like methadone to
I'm not sure. I'd have to
take
look into it.
people off. You see, that I would agree with. Give them methadone, remove heroin, remove the stigma, remove the let's say the illegality from it, and then treat people. These people are ill. They're sick. There's something. They've got a. They're addicts. They need help. They don't need to be criminalized. That's preposterous. There's no reason for it. Look after these people. Remove this illegality. Don't put them in
I
jail.
believe we have
It's not
some
going
of
to help
that here in
anyone.
Canada, but in the States, like especially crimes for weed, were just ridiculous. Like
Well, the crimes for
silliness.
weed are preposterous. You've
Yeah.
got a herb, and you're going to arrest someone because there's fucking herb. Look, when I was 12, we used to go up the mountains. We called them the mountains. They were well, they were mountains, but they were hills. They were big hills, and there used to be cows and cow pats, and around those you would get magic mushrooms that would grow. And I took those from age 12, and I felt it was enlightening. I felt it was mind expanding for me.
At 12?
And
Wow.
at 12, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, 12, 13, 14, I took magic mushrooms.
Got a big set of balls to
And
do
it
that.
was, yeah, well, no, I knew exactly what they looked like. So there was no risk of poisoning. I don't know where your balls concept comes from, actually.
Are they safer if you find them in the wild as opposed to a street drug?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you know what you're looking at. So you're looking at a little sort of, not pink, but cream colored nipple on the top of the little stringy mushroom that has brown below the cream, and then it's filtered. Sorry, I'm not trying to teach the kids here anything, but I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with magic mushroom. I'm sorry, psilocybin is a fantastic piece of drug, and if you can take it naturally from the earth and it's growing there, well, I'm sorry, I think it's wonderful. And so I had experiences from 12 to 14 of going up the mountains, collecting them. We would put them into a burger. We dry them a little bit, and we put them in our what we called our what was the name of it? Immersion heater. Immersion heater. That was the name of it. So the immersion heater was something that sent the heat around the radiators in the house.
Okay.
So we'd put it into that area because you'd also have some storage area, like little bits of wood, and you could dry your clothes there as well because it was quite hot. And I'd sneak it in there so my mom wouldn't see. Of course, I was 12, right? And and yeah, I'd go out with friends and we'd eat a burger, like one of those cheap shit burgers you stick in a
Yep.
microwave that probably cost like 40 cents to make. Um, and we'd put these well, drugs into, but I feel that the word drugs actually diminishes the quality. These are fresh grown mushrooms, man. You know, and and yes, they had psilocybin in them, and it was a wonderful experience. And I absolutely loved my 12 to 14 years, and I did my best at school. My mind was enlightened. I wrote my best essays. I did my best stuff, and it's done no negative to me whatsoever.
Sounds like a
So
performance
I'm
enhancing drug.
Uh, well, not in the short term, but I think it opens your mind to the possibilities that this universe is much more complex than we're aware of, and and there's no reason why not. I mean, I don't see a downside to having a reasonable amount of magic mushrooms. And I'm sorry, I have two. Well, I've got two families. I was married before a long time ago. I've got grown-up children, and I've got young children. I've got a 10-year-old and 12-year-old. But if they ever came to me and said I wanted some magic mushrooms, I'd probably say, yeah, give it a try, because I think it is amazing. And there's no downsides, and no one's ever died from a magic mushroom.
Yeah, I've been around with my friends who have tripped on mushrooms before, and I think that instead of burgers, they used put in ice cream sandwiches, and it was one of the more tame nights we had as shitty
Yep,
teenagers.
yep. It's pretty tame. It's pretty gentle. You can see in the night, which is amazing, because your pupils dilate to an
Oh,
amazing extent. So you can see at nighttime. It's fantastic. You're like a meerkat all of a sudden. It's wonderful, and you get these. Weren't we supposed to talk about games?
I think so. Uh, shit. Let me pull something out of my ass here. Ferrari Racing Legends, a really oddball title in the SMS chronology. A test drive
Yeah,
game.
that was a moneymaker.
Yeah, how did
Let's
that
get it
work?
right.
Such an obscure game. One of the more obscure games that like any sim dev has put out.
Okay, so Ferrari sued us for using Ferraris in GTR2.
Really?
So they were going to close down the company. And yeah, you see, here's the thing. Every question you ask me will have an interesting answer.
So this
You
is
wanna
kind of
be a
like
CEO
this is like
of one
the
of these
SRO
companies?
issue where he wanted to sue you and was like, "Hey, you're cool."
It's nothing to do with SRO. So look, here's the thing. Stefan Vettel completely removed himself from all responsibility and said,
Okay.
well, I told him to get the individual licenses. No, he didn't. He told me, you have the licenses, right? So we put what were there? There was Lister, there were Porsches, there were
Celine, Corvette.
Ferraris,
Yep.
there were, you know, what you call that stupid American car with a V10 up front?
Probably
That
the
Henry
Viper.
Cruise wrote. Yeah, the Viper. Yeah, sorry, I'm joking by the way I remembered that. So yeah, we 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 got a call from Ferrari, and they said, "You're not licensed to run Ferraris in this game." I said the game's on the market. It's about 3 months after ship, and I said the game's on the market. What are you talking about? We got the FIA GT license, and you're in FIA GT. And they said, yeah, but there's a sub clause in the contract that states that you must get a separate license from us.
Oh.
So at that stage, there was like, oh shit. So Tentacle, the company that were supposedly, the publishers at that stage,
Yep, I remember that.
uh, they panicked and they ran off to see Ferrari and Maranello, and then they called me. They said, Ian, you need to fly in. You need to talk to these people. So I ended up in Maranello, and I'm sitting there, and it transpires that Michaela Pays, the head of Tentacle, is selling Ferrari on the concept that we make a Ferrari racing game. And that's how we'll pay for the so-called lawsuit that's on the way because we breached licensing laws, and that's why it happened.
That's so
Now,
wild to me because like this is a whole entire game and a dev cycle that people got hyped up for because it used the test drive brand, so people were nice to see that was back. It used the Madness engine. It looked good.
We got that tied into. We got that because we had a good friend who worked for Atari.
And it all only existed because it was basically a lawsuit threat. This whole
Yes,
creative project.
yes.
Like imagine if like
There
a
would
rock
be no
band did
game.
that. Like imagine if it came out Guns N' Roses Chinese Democracy was because like someone sued Axl Rose in his private life and one of the stipulations was, hey, you need to finish Chinese Democracy this year and it's got to have these songs on it. Like that's essentially what you're saying here, which is just like mind-blowing that like an entire game that
Yeah,
we all got hyped
it's
for
pretty close.
was like
There would be no game without the lawsuit. Yeah.
this is wild.
We tried to make it good. We did the best we could in a very short period of time, and yeah, this is what most people don't know. And also, you have a certain insight into it.
Yep.
There's not unlimited input There's not
No.
unlimited capacity, and that's what people forget. It's like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do?
Yes.
We were out of time. We
Well,
didn't have enough people.
it can be a
We
lot
didn't
of
have enough
things.
money. We couldn't pay enough people to decorate. You know, you can't make perfection. Just it never happens. You
Yeah,
can get as
it's
close to it as you can with onto the circumstances, but they're always restricted, and they're restricted from multiple areas,
it's
and
yeah, it's
that's the
money,
issue.
time, resources, and another thing too is sometimes the actual license demands certain features or functionalities. Like you probably can't name names because,
Yes.
but
Oh,
like,
so many times. So the
what's
Ferraris have to be fastest in every single race.
yes?
Blah blah blah.
What are some of the
Oh
more
my god.
insane propositions that you've had come across your desk in terms of a licensor being insane? Again, don't name names if you don't want to. Just car brand or track. You know what I mean?
I have about 500 of them for you.
Pick three.
Uh,
Three really obscure ones.
uh,
Not like the worst story, but
God,
just like
you know what? It's actually impossible to answer this question without mentioning people and mentioning companies. And fuck, no,
okay,
that would be a
mention who you
company.
won't get in trouble with. How about? Because yes,
I
I've
can't
heard.
do it, man. I actually can't answer that question. I
Wow.
tell you why. There's no way I can state the honest response without bullshitting you, and I'm not going to do that.
Okay,
Because I cannot go to the core company name and state them.
that makes sense.
So, yeah, and by the way, they're freaking amazing. Give me with 4 or 5 beers in a pub, maybe you'll hear it with making sure your phone's off. But apart from that, oh my god, man, you have no idea.
But it's
Uh,
definitely exists.
oh, there's
Hey,
so much I want to tell you. There's so much I want to
it's
tell
a
you
good question,
right
isn't it?
now.
It's a good question. But it does
That's the
happen, right?
best
Like
question.
car X has to be
Oh,
fastest
you've
on Y
no
track.
idea how much it happens.
Wow.
Look, okay, let me give you one example.
Okay.
But this is a very subtle, very gentle example of something. This is like 1% of what the reality is.
Okay.
Uh, when we ship the cover of the game, certain cars need to be in the front if there are multiple cars. Okay? And if they're not slightly ahead of the other cars, that box that is in every shop in the world cannot be shipped. So that's just one micro example of
And that's a
what
perfect
we have,
example. That is a great example.
of what we have to go through. And I'm not mentioning any names. Okay?
Now that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
another guy in
that's
our
the
comments,
reality.
Billy
That is the
Strange, yep,
reality.
says the same thing. He's like, I've heard this from other devs too. So it's common knowledge. But it's crazy. Like I know I won't say the brand, but there was a brand when we were working on game X who wanted the entire campaign mode to center around their brand. And we had to tell them no.
Yep, yep, yep. That happens as well.
Yep.
We've had that multiple times from multiple
Okay.
people saying to us, we want our brand to be absolutely the key, the core, and here's the game design document. It's like fuck off. Really?
So they
Fuck
want their
off.
own Ferrari racing legends, and you're like, well, that's really not what
No,
we're
the
building
only
here.
time I didn't say fuck off was Ferrari Racing Legends.
Because
That one was for
yeah.
legal reasons.
Yep.
I actually had to jump through the hoops and dot the I's and cross the T's and do what I needed to do to support Tentacle at that stage.
That makes sense. And I mean, it wasn't the worst game.
It wasn't great. We didn't have a great development period.
The car library was probably the strong suit because you guys had a lot.
Well, there were great cars in there, and they were all Ferraris, and we tried to make it a little bit Need for Speedish in terms of being more mass market. I was of the opinion that if we sold a lot, then it would placate Ferrari more. So yeah, I mean that was my call, and I stand by it. And
did it work in the end?
Yeah. Sorry?
Did it work in the end?
No. No.
Oh no.
It wasn't what it should have been.
Oh no.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't what it should have been. We tried to mix the old and the new, and we tried to bring people through a journey,
Yeah.
but we didn't have the money and the time to be able to actually properly sell that journey
I remember it
in
was
the game.
grindy. It was very grindy.
Yeah, that was the issue.
Yep.
And we wanted to have a like a an overview, a story that drove people along. We wanted to have all the Ferrari drivers in
Oh, wow.
flashback videos that would pull them in to create this emotive experience. And of course, you can dream, right? That's
Yep.
what you want, but what you get is what they allow you to get.
And
So,
that's something that a lot of people don't understand about game development, in that what appears in the design doc or what's on paper usually doesn't make it to the final product, which is, that's just how the industry works. But what are the common problems? I think you've mentioned a little bit, just money, time, resources, staff, that you run into. Like, what are the primary factors that determine a game's scope?
um, scope is it's purely how many good people you got, how much time you got available, um, and that's scope. But the scope is also then judged by the the licenses that you're setting up.
Okay.
So each of the licensees, excuse me, and the licensors, they they make a judgment based on what they want. Well, look, we get imposed. So we're told we need this, 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 and this, and our new car is coming out at this point, and it needs to be absolutely sold, and that needs to be the key one, and we want that in the first place in the game, and we want that the first thing that anyone experiences during the opening. So, and that's one company. Now you multiply that by 50,
Yeah, every
and
single car
they're all
brand,
wanting
every track brand,
the
every
same
racing
thing.
series.
Oh God, man. By the way, iRacing are doing a wonderful job. But I think even Max Verstappen would agree. The cars spin too easily.
Yeah, that's been a point of discussion really for the past 10 years, and why people are starting to explore other options when it comes to sim racing. It's part of the reason why P-Cars 2 sold over 3 million copies. iRacing is the
Yep.
biggest and most notable, but at some point people are going to get tired of spinning out and say, you know what, even though it doesn't have the multiplayer infrastructure, or, the advanced multiplayer infrastructure,
Oh
they're
no,
going to
no,
try
no,
another
no.
game.
Their multiplayer infrastructure is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I got to give them credit for that. These guys, I was playing NASCAR racing by Papyrus, 24 years ago,
That sounds right.
using a 48K modem.
Yep.
I mean, these guys are fucking geniuses when it comes to. David Kamer is an absolute genius when it comes to writing code. This guy was able to make a 48K modem work better than 1 gig fiber optics.
Yes, because people would
This
league
guy
race
was a
back in the day
genius.
on that, and they liked it because it worked.
Yeah, it worked, and I was able to race. That's how I met Doug Arneo, by the way, who has been one of our physics directors for an awful long time.
Yeah, he was an old
We raced
Papyrus guy,
together
right?
on. Sorry, mate.
He was an old Papyrus guy, right?
He actually was involved in the early days with Paris as yeah.
Yep.
He's actually listed in Grand Prix Legends
That sounds right. And then he moved to
with the
ISI.
credit. He's listed with the credit in GPL.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, look, that's the deal, man. Look, it's there's so much bullshit. There's so much stuff that we have to do that we can't. Look, here's the thing. I read 80%, 90% of the negative posts, and I think to myself, they don't understand this was not under our control. And 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 that's, I think, the key issue. This is not something we could have changed. This was imposed upon us. This was something we had to do. This is something blah blah. And there's multiple reasons why, and a lot of people don't understand that. They when they're playing the games, they don't conceive of the commercial aspects, and the commercial aspects are crucial because you get no follow-on game, and you're sitting there with 100 plus staff, maybe 200. Well, at the end I had 900, but you what do? You have to pander to what is actually a commercial area that you can be successful. You understand?
Yep. And I think a lot of people view games as not that way and get upset over that aspect because they see it on par with like movies or music, where an artist just sits down and creates completely uninterrupted, aside from maybe major franchises like Star Wars, where it is a bit meticulous to get the toy aspect involved. But like most
I'm with
musicians
you.
sit down and just like write whatever the fucking song they want, right?
Well, I'm with you. Look, you can get away with that if you've reached the echelons of someone like Quentin Tarantino, for example. You know, you can say, "Here's what I'm doing," and you'll have multiple studios jumping at you to actually produce and release it.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to games, we're still in this. Let's say it's changing at the moment, but we're
That's good.
still in this situation where we have to pander to what the publishers want. And if you want to be mass market, the publishers are the ones who have the marketing backing. They're the ones who have access to putting games on shelves. And you have an effective small oligopoly, because you cannot be a publisher unless you published, but you can't publish unless you're a publisher.
So it's pretty much just like an
What?
established group
Yeah,
who
works
got
that
in
one
at the
out.
right time.
Excuse me, man. I didn't have enough cigarettes today, so I'm coughing because I'm talking too much and didn't have enough cigarettes. But the reality is that's where we are. We're sitting with an effective oligopoly of of a small group of publishers who have complete control over what gets you into shops. Now, here's the great thing: that's changing, and I think based on online sales, that's where the change is coming from.
Yeah.
So we're now able to do it digitally. We can sell it ourselves, and that's what I did back in the early days with Project Cars. I said, "To hell with the publisher. I don't want one. I'm going to do it myself." And then the publishers came running. Okay. We
Uh,
want this. We want this.
So what
And
were
the
those
truth
talks
is,
like? Because P-Cars again was kind of this like ragtag community project that spiraled into something really successful. I mean, it sold because there was no Gran Turismo
I
on the
wouldn't
market.
call it ragtag. I had a lot of plans for that,
Okay,
and the plans all came to fruition. Um,
but
it
the
may have
publishers just came
appeared
running. So
ragtag.
what does that talk look like? Were they bending over backwards just giving you whatever,
Oh,
or
you
was
have
it
no
like
idea. You have no idea. We had so many publishers coming in that you're disrupting the norm. That's. They didn't say that, but they came with offers that were excessive, and to me, excessive for the product. I don't think the product deserved the offers that we got, and they were coming from the perspective of that we were infiltrating their oligopoly. And the minute you're in there infiltrating their oligopoly, then we got to fix this. What are we going to do? Oh, we'll set up our own thing. We'll set up our own download stuff. We'll not pay Epic this amount of money. We're gonna fire. You've seen that with companies, and that's happened. So for me, it was wonderful. I was sitting there, just sitting back and enjoying what was happening.
Speaking of
It
selling on your own platform, you guys actually did that with Red Bull Air Race. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Red Bull Air Race was a free game, cost nothing, and we shipped. And actually, the airplane physics were quite interesting, and I think they were fairly accurate. They were from a proper pilot who was also a coder,
Oh,
who coded the physics for the flight process, and he was a great coder, by the way. So he coded everything. He coded the aerodynamics, the power of the engine, everything. It was completely coded, and but the problem is he shipped it as an Excel sheet. So we looked at an Excel sheet. We had to convert this to C++. It's like, oh god, okay. But that's what kept us rolling. All of these small projects on the side kept us rolling. It's what kept the team together. It's how I kept that group of where were we? 155 people when I left.
That sounds right.
Uh,
150 or 170, I think I remember the number being.
it might have been 170. That's here's the problem. My brain works until 100, and then I run out of toes and feet and hands and yeah. So yeah, it might have been 170 actually, and yeah. So these yeah these guys come and they offer something which may not be the absolute ultimate that you desire. It may not be exactly what you want to do. It may not be to your complete, wishes. It may not fulfill your wishes ultimately, but you got to do it because you got to keep the team together. And you've got a team of very educated people who are very good at what they do. And how do you keep them all together? Well, you get some work. And how do you get the work? Well, sometimes you do work that is not exactly what you want to do.
Here's a wild question. Is there a project that you worked on that never shipped that you regret canceling?
Yes.
Okay. Which one?
More than one.
Give me the top 3 that you regret canceling.
I can't tell you, man.
No.
They're all under non-disclosure.
Ah.
I can't say a word.
How about, is there a project you've wanted to work on but didn't? You never got the opportunity to.
Just one.
Just one?
Just one.
Is that
And
NDA
this
or
one I
no?
can tell you about. The most amazing rally game that anyone has ever played.
So like a Project Cars rally.
Yes, that's probably the best way to put it.
Okay.
You're quite astute there. A Project Cars rally, a Project Cars 2 rally, but better. I want something where when I sit and dream at night and I see that we're flying around the trees and I can see every leaf, and every leaf is shading every other leaf, and the leaves are falling off onto the circuit, and they cause slight disruption with the grip just at that moment. All of these micro variations. Stones pushed off from the cars in front, hitting your windscreen, maybe cracking it. You get all of these small micro variations. That's what I want. Not this just base, let's make a racing game. Something that actually transcends a standard racing game. Something that's mind-blowing. And this is what I would like to do next when I end my non-compete with Electronic Arts.
So you're thinking of entering in like a year's time, I guess? Maybe more? With a rally sim or some kind of rally sim?
So we're in January. Let me go back. January, December, November, October. Okay, so technically I got 8 months to go.
That's not bad. And I mean, it takes time to build a game in that
bad.
time, so we won't see it for a few years, but the idea is long-term, some sort of rally sim to challenge the already established status quo of you have Dirt Rally as the sim, the WRC is not the mass market game, but
it's going to be way beyond just rally, my friend.
Okay.
It's going to the plan that I have in my head that I can't actually espouse at the moment is way beyond rally. This is something that's going to change the whole fucking genre. I don't want to make a basic game. I want to do something special. It's what I've done. I mean, look, let's be straight. I created the concept of remote working.
Yeah.
I created the concept of mass group development. I created those concepts. I have a new concept. And this new concept is where I want to go. And this new concept that I can't actually speak about at the moment is something that's extremely special, and I think that everyone will be interested in. It's the old, going back about 38.4 minutes ago. It's the old, I have a cunning plan.
Now we have to try and transcribe what that might mean based on clues in the conversation.
You're checking the timing. You're checking the timing.
Someone might. I mean, like, there's ways to innovate in the racing game genre that no one's really done before. Like, one of the interesting ideas, people have had kicking around is that, like, especially for me as an amateur racer, like, when I install parts on my race car, it generates engine heat. And, like, I have to balance, like a camshaft upgrade with, like, a bigger engine fan. I gotta start, drilling holes or cutting holes in the bodywork so there's more airflow getting to the motor. When you
Hey,
play something like
don't.
Forza, you can just install, like, whatever
That's a
fucking
wonderful
upgrades you
idea.
want. Right? Like,
That's a wonderful idea. So I can't go into what I plan to do when my non-compete ends, but you're fairly on the mark with one aspect of it. The reality is that power causes heat. It's a de facto understood
yep.
concept. That's what happens. Uh, how do you cool it? Well, you have bigger coolers, but the bigger coolers weigh more, but you have more water in them. Then you got to blah blah blah, and you've got all of these interactions. What if? Oh shit! No, I was about to give the game away. So I can't give my concept away, but I'm talking about something that is so deep, so micro deep, like to the point
What
whereby
you're
we're
essentially
working out.
talking about is similar to an EA game called Motor City Online, where you just had crazy amounts of customization, like crazy. And it's something that EA tried. It
Yeah,
was an
but
MMO in the early 2000s, but
that was far too arcade. I'm talking about
yes,
something that takes the sim racing genre to a new level. Um, so you look, I can't make a game for 8 months, or I can't start working properly on a game for 8 months. But when I do, that game is going to be absolutely mind blowing. It's going to be, I own a company called Madcoin Limited.
how do you own a
Excuse me.
company called Madcoin Limited? Like, what's the process of getting a cryptocurrency developed with your name? Like, how does that work?
Very complicated. So I have a cryptocurrency expert who is currently setting up Madcoin Limited. Mad, as I mentioned earlier, for Media Arts Digital. And Madcoin, beautiful name, madcoin.com. Someone offered me $500,000 for the name, by the way. Madcoin.com. It's very short, it's concise, it works beautifully, it sounds great, it sort of ties into the whole ethos of the people who actually invest into crypto. So, they might be slightly mad, taking a risk, going crazy. So I have Madcoin. I still own that. I did not sell that to EA.
Did
And
they even know it existed?
I plan to. Sorry?
Did they even know it existed? Probably not.
Oh yes, yes,
Oh,
yes, yes. I had to list every single one of my companies. I had like 17. Um, so anyway, they weren't interested. Their loss. That's great. They wouldn't pay for it, and I insisted on a sales price for it. So that's all good. And yeah, so Madcoin will tie in beautifully because you could potentially. I'm just thinking here, out loud, on the flow. If you had a cryptocurrency that was completely focused on not just sim racing, but also first person shooters, etc., etc., and you could earn money from playing, and that money comes to you by crypto, and then the crypto is actually growing in price because we're releasing new games and more games over time, then I think that's an interesting crypto concept. And so madcoin.com, which I own as well, the .com, um, might, let me put it this way, might be a part of a game that I'll start to work on when my non-compete ends.
so it's almost like you'd be building like your own car RPG that's a sim racer that also has like crypto elements, like a
Well,
play
I
to
haven't
earn
been
game.
building anything. I haven't done anything. I'm not allowed to work for a year.
So you have a
So
whole year to plan this out on sheets
I
of
got a
paper
whole
around your
year to
house.
work it out in my head, uh, just to think what I would like. what's good for me, what's interesting, and then bring some people in and maybe have them work on it. I have a concept. I can set people off in a direction, and yeah, let them roll with it and see how it's going, and yeah, organize the direction. But I got something bigger on the way than anything I've ever done before.
In terms of creating a game, like when you come up with an idea, I mean, we're going to spend the next year doing that. What are you playing now? Like, what does a semi-retired
I'm
Ian
playing World
Bell?
of Warcraft.
Lots of WoW, hey?
Yeah, I'm playing World of Warcraft. I mean, it's my key game. I look at World of Warcraft and I look at the items that you have. So when you reach the top level of World of Warcraft, basically your item upgrading. And I have a 60 level, of course, character, and I'm upgrading the items. They're all 8 out of 9. They all have a particular number, and I'm thinking to myself, hold on, this whole notion applies beautifully to a racing game because over here you have like an engine, and over here you have like aero, and over here you have like your tires. Excuse me, and over here you have like your usables, like
Yep.
fuel and
Yeah, and
oil.
that's something racing games
It's
don't model, that you have to buy tires for your car in real life and put gas in the thing and change the oil. No games, modeled that.
Yes, yes. Well, because it's a bit of a drag for people, but the reality is it depends how you do it. Because if you look at World of Warcraft, your armor items slowly weaken over
Yep.
time. They get damage, and if you don't fix that damage, then they all of a sudden you get a warning sign with your character and the area of damage you have on just to the left of the right hand side of the screen, and it starts telling you, hey, you might need to fix this. So um, doesn't this apply beautifully to racing? I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean that's
every single aspect of it.
yeah, like maintaining
Because
my
you
car,
can race
it's
the fuck out of an engine. You can. What
yep.
about turning? What about having an engine? Like, what about having a total, not just all of these micro upgrades, but of course we might have those if we do it. What about having a complete engine replacement, and you're sitting there looking at it and thinking, what is the term of life
Yeah, what's the
of
lifespan? We have
this?
that. We have those discussions in our garage for amateur teams all the time. Like, how long is this part gonna last? When is it gonna blow? Because I mean, when you race four cylinders, you're pushing an engine that's meant to be driven to the grocery store to its limit
Exactly.
over and over again, and we know like it's a time bomb. Like stuff's gonna fail on it, and that makes especially like entry level
Exactly.
racing really interesting because no one's racing with aftermarket shit. It's all reliability, and it makes races really interesting because usually the quickest car in
Exactly.
time trials or hot laps does not win the race, especially at an amateur level.
And what if you um, micro divide that into multiple different micro areas? Okay, what is actually happening? Am I wearing out the cylinder?
Yep.
Am I not set up properly for the valves?
Did
Is
I
the
put the
camshaft
wrong
too
ECU tune in
harsh?
it and it's hitting the wrong revs?
Yeah, exactly. Is the camshaft too harsh, or our double cams that we may have upgraded to? Are they too harsh? Are they kicking the valve heads too harshly? Are we not getting the right timing? Are we working with the right ECU? Are we Look, we have so much we can do in sim racing. With so much we can do in sim racing. But anyway, I have some plans. I'm not going to go into any more detail about it, but once my non-compete ends, believe me, it's going to be there's going to be an explosion, man.
Are non-competes common in the industry? Like, why does that happen
Yeah,
specifically?
they're normal. They're normal because big companies come to you and say, "We'll pay you a certain amount of money not to work for a certain time."
Because they think you can beat them to the market with a product, right?
Potentially that, and also just for comfort, because they're so accustomed to it at these days. They're so accustomed to it. They just take, if you're a lead, if you're key lead. I'm the CEO, was the CEO.
Yeah.
And if you're a lead who is controlling things, then of course they want you out of the picture, so you're not controlling the company anymore, and they'll pay you for that for a certain time, and then you have a non-compete that basically means you don't do anything specifically in this area for a certain period of time, and that's it. So that's how it plays, and I'm happy to take Electronic Arts money for. Thank you very much, guys. By the way, if you're listening, and that's how it is. Yeah, that's how we play it at this level. But hey, what I have coming, man. Oh God, I can't wait to tell you. I really can't wait to tell you. I'm so excited. I'm fucking so excited to tell you what the plans are. And I've had these plans for a while, but they wouldn't really work when I was in a let's say a corporate situation, in a large corporate situation. It's more of a David versus Goliath
And
situation.
it's almost like
This is
what would you do if you had a clean slate and no one telling you no?
Well, that's exactly what I have, my friend. And it just takes me 8 months to be able to explode on it. And I got 8 months to work on it. Well, yeah, actually, it's worked on already. And that's where we're going. That's where we are going. And by the way, I'd like you to be part of the company, of course,
Oh
because you've
Jesus.
always been great, Austin. You work beautifully. I'm of the opinion that you were fired unnecessarily.
No, Ian, you can't say this on a public stream.
I'm saying it on a fucking public stream, and anyone else who doesn't like it can go fuck themselves. Okay?
Oh,
I'm
okay.
saying I feel you were fired unnecessarily. You were great at what you were doing, and maybe your politics didn't fit. I'm a lefty, you're a righty. That's fine. I can work with you, but hey, you can't work for big corporate if you're left wing.
So you
So,
almost
sorry, right wing.
look at it seeing as this whole stalker writing the company was an avenue to go somewhere
Oh,
else
but
with it.
I've seen so much more about Stalker than EA ever did. And this Jacoby guy was and is someone in need of help, and I would like to help him. I tried to call and talk to him to understand more about what he was saying. But look, it's not about him, Austin. I think the reason why you were fired is that your politics are right wing. That's the long and short of it. Right wing doesn't fit in this modern world of
That seems like a
wokeness.
scary precedent to set, because I mean that's if you start turfing people for
Look,
political
well,
ideologies,
you
that's
were making
lawsuits.
statements online
Oh
about
yeah.
trans people. You were making statements online about trans people that were negative.
And see,
You
they
were
never
making
came to me
statements.
specifically about that. Like that was never brought up in any discussion I had with them.
Yeah, it wasn't one specific, but you did actually mention it. So you made negatives about trans people. You made negatives about gay people. Who I have a lot of friends who are gay. I was gay when I was younger, and that's the issue. That's the issue, Austin. It's not. I don't judge you, man. Look, I don't give a fuck what your politics are. I care how good you are at your job.
So
That's all I
what's very
care about.
backwards is why wouldn't big corporations want that diversity of opinion to make even more money?
Because you're not allowed to be right wing these days. That's the
That's
long
all
and
it
short
is.
of it. That's the long and short of it, man. Now it just transpires. It fits with my personal ethos because I'm very left wing, but it doesn't fit with yours. Hard luck. You've fallen into modern society whereby being right wing is a horrible thing, and not you're not actually far right. I mean, look, to be honest with you, I think the far left have become more Nazi than the far right.
Well, that's the
They're
second time you've been
they're
canceled this stream if the drug talk didn't do it.
well, they can do whatever the fuck they want, and I don't care, and I never did. I just tell the truth as I see it. It doesn't mean that it is the truth. It means it's my truth, and if I can't have my truth, then that's Nazism. I'm allowed to speak my truth. I think we've reached the stage whereby the very far left, and I will, underscore the point, very far left, have reached the stage where they're stifling free speech to the extent that people are not allowed to actually express themselves. And I'm sorry, now I can't be part of your group because I'm a liberal, and I'm all for free speech, and liberal means freedom, and I just want everyone to say what they want and be free to say what they want, and let's have a fucking argument about it if we disagree. But
When
don't
do you
cancel
think this
someone.
push to stifle free speech started? Do you remember was there a certain point where it went, oh, this is getting weird now? What was the point for you?
It was BLM.
What particularly about BLM?
Well, look, I completely agreed with their concept because I'm left. So I agree with the notion that Black Lives Matter. Absolutely. And I do feel that there's a disproportionate amount of black people who were being, let's say, harshly treated by
Law enforcement.
law enforcement.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it was unacceptable. And I've seen a few videos that are absolutely disgusting and they make me sick. But I think what BLM turned into was a slightly more nefarious concept that led to the notion that you're not allowed to judge anyone based on their color. Look, here's the thing, mate. I'm Irish, right? So I have a certain freedom to be able to speak here because the Irish are the first slaves. Okay. If we go back to slavery, if you want to have a look at it, we were enslaved. We had an 8 million population in Ireland before Oliver Cromwell from England came, and we were 1.5 million 58 years later. Do you understand that is the worst genocide in history that's never been mentioned?
Yeah, mathematically, like, Holodomor gets mentioned, the Holocaust gets mentioned. We never learned about the Irish genocide.
Okay, so go have a look at it. Go research that. You'll see it for yourself. We went from 8 million to 1.5 million people. That's where we were. Yes, we didn't all get killed. Only 4 million of us starved to death. The rest went to America, or were sent
Jamaica?
off to places like Jamaica under what's called indentured servitude. And under indentured servitude, it's effectively slavery for white guys from Ireland. I mean, when you died, your father had to take up the years of indentured servitude that you had remaining.
That's similar to
So,
the system North Korea has, isn't it?
yeah, pretty much. So we were under hell, and don't get me wrong, most of my friends are English. I don't hold it against them. I hold it against the government at that point. Do you understand? I don't
Yep.
have judgment against the current people who might not subscribe, who might be part of that community, so to speak, but not by choice for the horrible aspects of it. So I don't judge anyone. I have no fucking judgment, man. I'm a harsh liberal. I'm really, really far left. Not far, very far left. Not these crazies who are almost Nazi. I'm far left on my politics. And honestly, the Irish went through worse shit than you can possibly imagine. And if you do a little bit of research on it and go and read it, and you'd be amazed because the whole world knows about what the Jews went through, which was horrific. And the whole world knows what Kosovo went through, which was horrific. But no one knows that there was 8 million people in Ireland. Do you know, 200 years ago, there was 8 million people in Ireland. Today, there's 7 million people in Ireland. We still haven't got back to where we were 200 years ago. So, so fuck all that shit, okay? I'm Irish, and I'm able to speak about these things, okay?
Okay.
We were the first slaves.
So, how did you feel BLM messed up handling their own movement?
Well, I mean, the people who were in control buying themselves 4 houses wasn't a great positive. That didn't do a great deal for selling the movement. Let's take the cash and fill our pockets. Sorry, that's not the concept. And I actually put money into it, by the way.
And then you found out that one day that it was buying other people's
Well,
houses.
well, I found out that, well, I won't mention names, but I found out that she had 3 luxury homes. And I'm thinking, hold on, and how long? And it transpired since the investment into BLM. So I'm sorry, I put my investment into BLM. I mean, I mean it. That's it. I'm sorry. I put my money into BLM. I think it's a mistake now. I think they've moved slightly militant for my comfort.
Yeah, the
Um,
shots of Denny's burning. I mean, what did Denny's or Advance Auto Parts do to those communities, right? Like that's where I
Absolutely
jumped off the
nothing.
bus.
Absolutely nothing. What are you trying to actually achieve here? Uh, you know, what's your achievement? You're burning out a multinational. What are you doing? I mean, look, they should be burned out for some reasons, but not for this one. Uh, yeah, yeah. So I don't get it, and I think BLM actually was the instigator of the current issues that we have. To get back to your initial point,
Yeah,
and
because
that
it
may not be popular, but I don't give a flying fuck. Okay.
it, it seemed like criticizing it, that was the one thing you just weren't allowed to talk about. They were allowed to have their some of their uncontrolled outbursts and buy the houses and burn the Advance Auto Parts, and criticizing that or being like, hey, this isn't really the way to go about things. That wasn't a very popular stance.
Yeah, I think I got a slight get a jail free card because I'm Irish, and I've sold that. So yeah, but I agree with your posit. I agree completely, and I think they're doing themselves a disservice. And I completely fucking agree with the Black Lives Matter. If you look at the statistics, the reality is more black people are being killed by police than white people. If you look at the balance of the population and work it out, they actually are. That's the reality. There's a certain prejudgment towards black people that doesn't seem to be applied to whites.
Well, even
And you
even
know,
going
I'm
back to
sorry,
the
man. I'm a
80s.
lefty. You're not going to change me, regardless of what you say. Um, but I don't agree with the owners having 3 homes from the investment that partially I made.
Well, even dating back to the 80s, like in terms of like really bad persecution, the crack epidemic in South Central LA is the big one, where
So that was set up by the government.
exactly, it was, they were destroyed by the government, and it was proven. And like,
Well, the government created that.
how could
They
you,
gave it to the black people.
yeah, and it was, wasn't it partially to fund like either like a Nicaragua war or something like that? It
Yes,
ties
yes,
into
yes.
Gary Webb's story, right?
You had Colonel what was it called? Oh shit, I
It
forget
was
his name.
Gary Webb who broke the story, wasn't it? And he ended up getting suicided with multiple bullets, if I remember correctly, because they did a movie on it.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it was Shoot
probably
the.
2 shots at the back of the
Yes,
head. He killed
yes.
himself with. Yeah, that tends to happen to people who don't follow the let's say the narrative that is sold by the government. You tend to get 2 bullets to the back of the head. And suicided, and that's fine. That's also fine. Yeah, you know what? Fuck them all, man. I'm gonna come out with the best fucking racing game the world has ever seen. In
And
eight,
it'll unite
well,
both the
I'm not
left
gonna
and the
come
right.
out in 8 months. I can start work in 8 months, but give me a year, and you're gonna see something that is absolutely mind blowing. It's gonna get, well, maybe a year and a half, but give me some time. I'm gonna start small. I'm gonna do it with a small group of people that I trust, and I'm going to build this shit to beat the big boys, and then the big money's going to come in. And you know what? I might tell them to fuck off this time because I've got too much money anyway, so I don't care.
So you're just gonna cuck a major developer when you make it big? I like it.
Yeah, I might cook them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I might cook them and their wives.
Oh man.
So, yep, yep.
Do you have a
Might do
company
that as
lined
well,
up for this? Is it a
and they'd
regular
enjoy it.
player?
What's that?
Do you have a company lined up for this? Is it a regular player or someone brand new to sim racing?
Well, we're going to use Madcoin, which I own, as the crypto aspect. And the company, no, it's not lined up for the game as such. But I'm going to set the company up specifically as a Singaporean based company, um, and I'm going to do that for tax reasons because I don't want to pay too much tax.
Is Singapore a tax haven in that regard? I'm not quite sure how international laws work and stuff like that.
Not really. You pay 22% tax. I mean, it's not. It's not. It's not Monaco. You know,
Okay.
it's you pay 22% tax from your income. That's it. You know, it's not like I don't know what you pay in Canada.
I'd have to look, but I mean, is it slightly lower than other countries, and that's kind of why you do it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's better. It's better for capital gains. So if you make money from a company, you don't pay any tax for capital gains.
Okay.
Zero. And if you get dividends from a company that's making money, you don't pay any tax from that. But I've never had a dividend, so I don't know what that looks like.
Well, and a lot of people don't know that you actually live in Singapore.
I live in Singapore full time, yeah. And I pay my 22% tax, and to me, that's a decent tax rate. I'd maybe stretch it to 30 as a maximum if I was pushed. And I think that's enough to look after the infirm, the old, the people who need, looking after. And that's fine. I'm happy with that. It makes me comfortable. I give enough to charity. Fuck it. It's extra money. And to me, that's okay. But the problem is in the UK, it's 45% base tax.
Oh.
Then you've got 12.5% national insurance added to that. Then you've got 22%, I believe, at the moment, purchase tax for everything. And they call it VAT, value added tax. And when you multiply it all up, you're paying 70% of your income, maybe 72 to tax. And that's okay if those people really need the money, but most of them are just fucking skivers who don't want to work. They're just sitting at home thinking, hey, this is lovely, I'll sit on benefits.
Benefits and trying to start a Twitch career.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'll watch it if they're interesting.
I mean, you could always be a titty streamer. Well, I think that's what they're called nowadays. They just sit in the just chatting section and sit in like hot tubs.
Mate, I'm too rich to have to do that shit. Plus, also, I've got too many plans to do that shit. So, there's too much on the way. Too much on the way. Austin, are you going to work for me?
Of course. What the fuck else do I have to do?
Love it. Can we line up some of your followers now and get them on board as well if they're talented? You got to be talented.
I know a couple of guys. I know a couple 2D artists, a couple 3D artists. I know a really well-renowned physics guy in the automobilista modding scene that I have always wanted to work alongside because him and I have similar ideas in how a car should handle.
Don't tell me you're both right-wing nut jobs.
I mean...
Yeah,
no.
you are.
No.
Okay.
They're not in Alberta, so they're not right-wing. That's all that counts.
Well, look, do your work and don't talk to me too much. And it's going to be fine. Oh, man. Okay, look, I got to go. You know why?
You got WoW to play, don't
my
you?
Children.
No, you got to feed your children?
Got to feed my children. That's what I got to do. So yeah, and I got to take some of my hormone replacement therapy as well. So I'm past time. So all good. Anyway, enjoy the podcast, everyone.
Yeah, have fun, guys. I'll finish out these last stages here. And thanks, Ian, for coming on and hanging out with us. Again, I didn't label this as Ian Bell as a guest, so whoever tuned in thinking they were getting Colin McRae got a lot extra.
Oh, change the fucking title, man. You know.
You want me to? Sure, I can do that after.
Do it. Fuck them all. Not the listeners. I love you. Fuck all the overseers and the hierarchical assholes and the corporate controllers. Okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Got
all
it.
Right. Take care, Mr.
Soon,
Ian.
mate.
Yep. See ya.
Bye. Bye.
So that was a 2-hour call with Ian Bell where we covered a shitload. So let's recap. Ian cannot work in any sort of video game company for 8 months. He's got a non-compete clause with EA, but it's set to run out later this year. His overview of a game is essentially a rally racing sim he wants to build that will have MMO-style elements and reinvent what sim racing means, I guess. It's tough to discern what direction he wants to go in that, but I think I mentioned Motor City Online in that discussion. It seems like it'll follow some blueprints of that based on just what he kind of talked about on various tangents, which I'm fine with. Motor City Online, I know he mentioned it was an arcade game, but it had a lot of great ideas, and it seems like it might be the time to recycle them, considering where you get GT3 Sim after GT3 Sim. Shift 3, for those who really enjoyed the Shift duo of games, the first one coming in 2009 and the second in 2011, there was supposed to be a third. Really, really exciting. That got canned, unfortunately, just before or just after, I forget the exact time, Shift 2 shipped, which forced SMS, who believed they would have steady work and income, into pitching the crowdfunding campaign that eventually became the Project Cars franchise. What else did we cover? Certain games were released as adver games. The BMW Challenge free demo that SMS put out, I believe prior to the NFS Shift release, was essentially an adver game for BMW. Other games in their chronology, Ferrari Racing Legends under the Test Drive banner was an SMS game running on the Shift engine. Was made to placate Ferrari because Ferrari threatened to sue SMS for, from what I understand, how did he word it? Not breach of contract, but using their licenses without permission. Because when they made GTR, it turns out they couldn't just license the whole FIA GT series. They had to get sub-manufacturer licenses, and they didn't with Ferrari. And Ferrari said, we're kind of pissed off about that. We want to sue you. And to placate them, Ferrari Racing Legends was created. So there are some games on the market that are not essentially creative pieces, but means to an end, which is really bizarre because when that game was announced, it wasn't that long ago. I was like 19 or 20 when that came out. It was like, wow, there's a new NFS Shift-style racing game with only Ferraris, and, you kind of get cautiously optimistic and treat it as like a proper creative release, and it really wasn't. It was a business decision. Ian tried to go into depth about licenses demanding certain elements of the game or certain creative decisions in the game being made, which is a really interesting rabbit hole that he couldn't elaborate on because apparently it's so frequently. Yeah, Billy's got it right. We covered a fucking lot. We covered some stuff we probably shouldn't have. Magic mushrooms, BLM, that's going to be an issue. That was some of the most interesting content I've ever heard about this hobby. Yeah. Totally unhinged. Yeah. Well, and that kind of shows why SMS grew into to the size of a company it did, and had so many people willing to work for it, even though the Project Cars games were fairly divisive. Is that was for over a decade the head of the studio and the mentality the studio operated on. So you have someone at the very top who doesn't want to play by the own rules, or by the standard set of game development rules, and is very certain in their decisions, who has a very open mind when it comes to even just like basic stuff like politics. That last bit at the end there, where Ian thinks that I was let go from SMS not because of the Jacoby shit, but it was basically an avenue to get someone who didn't politically align with the company out of the company. But Ian doesn't give a fuck about any of that shit, because he has friends on both ends of the political spectrum, and often they agree on certain topics more than they disagree. Although, unfortunately, that doesn't fly in the corporate world, which is very disappointing to hear someone of that stature in the industry basically confirm that. So, Game Informer, IGN, any right-wing extremist sites that want to pull something from this interview and have content on their shit, that's important to have someone that high up basically confirm that, yeah, that kind of culture of you are not allowed to have certain opinions, even if they're relatively tame, or grounded, or reasonable, or thorough. There are just certain opinions that are just not allowed anymore. And he believes it really started with Black Lives Matter, and how off the rails that movement kind of went, and how there was basically you weren't allowed to criticize certain parts of it. That's where the stifling of free speech started, at least he believes. What else did we cover? We covered a lot. We covered the GTR days where Stefan Rattel, who runs the SRO sanctioning body that polices, what is this called? Not polices, but more or less runs the FIA GT series. Back in the day, it would have been FIA GT1. Now it's GT World Challenge FIA GT. It's gone through a bunch of names. Basically called Ian in and said, what the fuck, you used all my brands and licensing and basically my IPs without permission, but you did such a good job of promoting us, and we didn't even ask for it, that we should just partner up instead. And now Stefan Rattel and his organization and his cars appear in a wide variety of racing sims, and it's basically the reason stuff like Assetto Corsa Competizione exists with GT World Challenge licensing, with Blancpain licensing. That was essentially spearheaded by Ian Bell making a cool sports car mod for F1 2001. So that is the man who is essentially lit the match to get GT racing featured in Sims, because as we mentioned, the races were not popular. If you go look at GT1 footage from the early 2000s, I think there's like rounds from 03 and 04 up on YouTube, filmed in 4:3 resolution or 4:3 screen format. It's just empty stands. The series was not popular until it went viral on a few sites for being just a really good mod. So that kind of got Stefan Rattel's gears turning in his mind that, like, hey, like, this video game shit is really important. So maybe there's a reason a lot of GT3 content is appearing in Sims over the past 10-15 years, is because SRO is just extremely easy to work with and are visionaries in regards to wanting to get GT content and GT cars and GT spec racing in as many games as possible. And that was essentially spearheaded by Ian Bell. Other content we covered, or other grounds we covered, Ian believes he's, and I believe this too based on just the era of time frame he mentioned, one of the pioneers of working remotely, and as he was doing it before there's even infrastructure set up, because they were really just kids on computers. They knew of programs like MSN and could weaponize them and use them to create games and work on projects across the world with everyone working from home with the limited tools they had available, and it worked. The next and one of the wildest topics that we discussed is the elasticity and forgivingness of driving a race car at speed. They shipped the original GTR with very peaky tires, similar to what we see featured in iRacing, which is, the scourge of many sim racers' existence, having to deal with tires that just wreck if you get a little sideways. Ian Bell, after the company made decent money shipping GTR 1 and GT Legends, which was kind of like an expansion or a standalone expansion, but kind of not. It was its own game based on current historic touring car classes. Really neat game. GP Laps is a feature on this game on his channel. Ian basically bought himself a sports car, went to a few track days, did a bunch of laps at all the main circuits in England, and discovered, hey man, when I get fucking sideways, like, I don't die. And our game isn't realistic. So you could argue that the first one in sim racing to really discover that, like, hey, cars actually have grip over the limit, and start working that into his game, was Ian Bell. And that's important because that's really divided sim racing into two camps, between those who think iRacing is realistic and the overly peaky tires is realistic and building that into their games and their mods, versus people who have track experience saying, hey, no, wait a second. Cars are really forgiving. Cars are, he used the phrase, self-aligning. Damn, the Ian Bell thing will be the best thing that'll happen for sim racing. Well, with any video game project, and I mean, I saw it working at SMS, like, there's what's on the drawing board, and there's what you can reasonably achieve in the time you have to work on a game, with the resources you have available, stuff like that. It's a bit like a school project, just on a massive scale, right? If the teacher gives you a week to work on a poster for your shitty elementary class, whatever you're doing, there's a level of quality you can put into it, versus what would happen if the teacher gave you a month to work on it, or 2 months to work on it, right? But it'll be interesting to see what survives the cutting room floor, because even if you can't do every last thing Ian Bell mentioned, you can still do elements of it. You can still do simplified elements of it that aren't insane, that don't have a ton of overhead, that work within existing features or engines. Like, a lot of people don't realize, like, when you talk about stuff like ISI motor, ISI motor, a lot of people don't realize, has a really intense upgrade system, right? So you download R-Factor mods back in the day, and you could change everything on like the Subaru Impreza, from like lights to like tires to like cockpit view, interior parts, you know, because R-Factor's modular like that, and it was built into the game. So if you make, let's say you end up making a game based on ISI motor, which is probably why they used ISI motor for the Shift games, because it allowed for a massive upgrades branch. Even if you can't do every last thing and having, you know, parts that wear and tear, you can still put a lot of fucking parts in the game. You can still make, like, something that rivals Forza in terms of customization, which is basically what they did with the Shift games. So even if all of his ideas don't stack up, whatever survives the cutting room floor could be pretty interesting. And Ian's at the point where he doesn't want to play with a publisher right now. He doesn't want to play, you know, the traditional game of trying to secure funding in that regard. He just wants to have fun and make a cool game. And we don't really have a lot of companies out there like that nowadays. We have companies making very safe games. I mean, there's a reason Forza Horizon 5 exists, and there's, you know, a number 5 on it, right? It's a game that releases every 2 to 3 years with a very specific formula, as opposed to someone just saying, you know what would be cool? Let's make this whole fucking new game. So that's really insightful and really exciting. What other ground did we cover? There's a lot of shit we talked about that people are probably going to clip. Sorry, I'm trying to pay attention to the road. I'm actually running a pretty good lap. So, while we've been discussing and essentially running an impromptu podcast, I've been playing through Colin McRae Rally on the original PSX with a Logitech G29. This game really isn't bad. Believe it or not, the car... future Colin McRae games that would come out beyond this game, such as CMAR... Oh, hit the fucking tree. Fuck me. You can tell I've been driving for 2.5 hours. Colin McRae games from 2 onwards were pretty arcadish. This drives a lot more like the original Dirt Rally, where like you have to creep into corners. And goddamn, this stage is like difficult. We're winning the championship, so I'm not worried I'm going to get fucked out of it, but... Again, as stated at the beginning of this rather lengthy video, I'm running Duck Station, the newest build, with a Logitech G29 set to 200 degrees rotation, and I used to use a wheel in PS1 games. You use the NG-Con controller, and you map the Logitech analog steering and analog pedals to the analog buttons on the NG-Con, and it'll interpret this game, and any PS1 game you attempt to play, it'll interpret your steering wheel perfectly. Even some games actually have like wheel calibration options to make sure your steering is 1-to-1, which this game does. Same with throttle inputs. So even though my hands aren't really moving like super smooth, like it's definitely a thing. Like I drove this whole season mode with a wheel. The AI difficulty I've noticed, and again I don't want to cut Ian off to talk about a PS1 game. AI difficulties all over the place. Some rallies and some stages I've won by a lot. Some I've lost by, you know, a lot, which is disappointing. You can tell the AI wasn't very optimized, and even in some reviews for this game, when it was ported to PS1, they noted there were some issues with AI, with drawing the environment. Some visual effects are not as good as they could be. So this game came out on PC, and then it took about 1.5 years to get ported to the PlayStation 1. So graphics had evolved past this game's release date when it finally came out. And it definitely shows. Anyway, we're on the special stage, in the rain, midday, wet mud. This is to unlock the... I believe it's the Audi S1. And if I fuck up, I might have to run the whole championship all over again, which is scary, but I think we'll be okay. What the fuck did motorsport games do wrong? Good lord. The Shift games were made on ISI and were great. I think they bit off more than they could chew. I don't think they hired the right people. I've looked at like the staff list, and there was a lot of people who specialized in mobile games and didn't really have the prowess or just the background knowledge to make a Nascar game. That's my personal opinion. The investment stuff, to me, doesn't really make sense. I don't know why they listed themselves as a publicly traded company right off the bat. I just thought that was weird. So I don't want to say it's an investment scheme. But I feel like we'll know more info in 6 months to a year. Just if there's any fallout from their stock price dropping so much. And then we'll be able to make a more accurate assessment on like what's actually up with that company. Because it's a weird situation. Very rarely does a game ship in that poor of a state across any genre. So when it happens in our little corner of the video game landscape, it's weird. Like, it's not something you expect, and like a lot of people are asking what the hell went wrong, especially NASCAR fans, because when you're dealing with an exclusive license, that's their only option of playing like any game based around their favorite racing series for that whole year. And there's a lot of people left asking, a lot of questions about that shit. Speaking of investment schemes, that's another topic we covered pretty extensively, is basically how PCARS 1 worked. And they did get investigated by the FSA, which is basically Britain's financial authority, or it might have been Europe's, one of the two. And they essentially believe that Ian Bell was running a scam company. That there was no game, that the returns promised or offered was just ridiculous. And basically they thought it was a Theranos type situation where like it was just run by a bullshit artist, and they figured they had caught a live one, basically until Ian walked into the conference and was like, well, here's the game we've been building, like this exists, this was funded by just regular people's money, and like it very obviously works, here's build 980 of PCARS 1. And the financial advisors, or the people charged or tasked with investigating SMS as a company, were like, oh, okay. They weren't expecting the company to be legitimate, so they just let him finish it and then went, look, if we allow you to do it, there will be a shitload of other people, getting into it, essentially acting as snake oil salesmen, and we just don't have the means to police this. Ian wants the link to the live stream. We will send that to him right now. I don't see why not. So it really... Hold on, just sending a text, because he's like, hey, I want to watch that back. That was fun. Anyways, we have finished Colin McRae Rally on intermediate difficulty, and we've unlocked the Audi Quattro. Nice. About 2.5 hours, 3 hours of play to get through a championship run. We got some Group B cars now, which is really exciting. What else did we cover? Man, we covered so fucking much. Jonesy wants to know, so what was that thing about iRacing, NASCAR, and Motorsport games you mentioned the other day on Twitter? I've heard from one source that has been right about iRacing related shit in the past and gotten info out that went viral and it was a big deal, that Motorsport Games is probably going to lose the NASCAR license, as well as IndyCar pulling out at some point based on whatever NASCAR does. With iRacing acquiring Monster Games, as well as the company behind some indie arcade racing game with really good graphics and suspension physics, the belief is that iRacing will push several boxed products to the market that you and I can play offline, the same way we'd buy NRO3 back in the day, or IndyCar Racing. It would be a separate entity from iRacing, so there'd only be like offline play in it, right? And only, the ability to run licensed drivers, an opponent manager, so you could create your own custom grids and import paint schemes into the game. And it would ship, as a $60 product. That seems to be the direction that whole situation is heading. Motorsport Games has saved face by putting out a roadmap for NASCAR 21, but it's in my opinion, unacceptable. One of the new modes Motorsport Games is trying to promote is a next-gen test car mode where you can drive the new next-gen Generation 7 NASCAR Cup cars by yourself on a track. And that's going to be a brand new mode they'll roll out in February. A test mode on a $60, or $80 licensed product is being touted as a new feature post-release. Unacceptable. You guys could take over the NASCAR license knowing Motorsport Games' incompetence. Well, that's the second part of the rumor, is that NASCAR will give their license solely to iRacing, and which is basically what should have been done years ago. Anyway, we won the championship over Colin McRae as pizza sub. We had wins in Australia, Greece, New Zealand, Sweden. Is that not that? That's not Corsica. That's Indonesia. So I think we won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 8 rounds. Pretty good. We unlocked all the cars in the game. We've unlocked the expert difficulty, I believe. We'll have to see here as we return to the main menu. Congratulations. It's really impressive, just like the art style, of this game back in the day, the amount of care and polish that went into it. Little scenes like this, which we really don't see in a lot of racing games, especially racing sims, where, where there's like a podium sequence. Although you do see it in stuff like Dirt 4, I believe the WRC games and stuff like that. This is when gaming was fun. To be honest, I never played Colin McRae Rally back in the day, aside from a demo on the Adrenaline Vault. When you grow up in Canada, rally racing is not on TV, right? So I played the demo of this and went, it's not really my thing. But it's just really cool to see how much care has been put into this. You completed the Intermediate Championship. Try Expert Mode for a greater challenge, so we've unlocked a new difficulty. Maybe we'll do another stream following up on that. Good morning, Super PV. You missed a killer stream. Let's take a look at if any of these guys are still around. Development, Guy Wilday. PlayStation programmers, Lee Metcalf, Andy Tate. Game programmers, Chris Preston, Chris Southall, Jamie Lowe's, Mark Roberts, Steve Robb. Car mechanics, Scott Steven. Very small dev team. You didn't need a lot of, a giant staff. Couple PC programmers. Track development tool, 1 guy. Track designers. So these are the guys that actually sat down and made the tracks. 5 names, so it's probably 1 guy per track, I would say. Track artist is probably your 2D texture work, maybe your 3D work. Let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. Car artist, this will be your 3D models, maybe your 2D models as well. Or not 2D models, sorry. 2D texture work, just 3 guys. FMV, there's full motion video in this game, so you have a small editing team. Audio, 1 guy. Codemasters QA team had Chris Rowley at the helm of the QA. Neil Jones is the QA team leader. And the QA team was... How many people we got on this QA? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow. 10. Ben Field. 11. That's actually a pretty big QA team. That's probably double what we had on P-Cars 3. Serious. And I think P-Cars 2, at least internally. Let me go to, I believe it's Sony of America. I believe SCEA is Sony of America. So we're going to skip this cutscene. It'll take us back to the main menu. Cody's were in on this. Yeah, this is Codemasters. Yeah, Colin McRae Rally is Codemasters. They also made the Toka Racing Series. New high score is 45. New tracks 32. New cars 3. Expert mode enabled. Do you want to save the data? Of course we do. That sounds fun. So when you complete championship mode with the WRC spec cars in this game, you unlock a new difficulty, which I believe is for Group B rally cars, which we'll try again probably tomorrow or at some point on the weekend. We have a new menu. Holy fuck. If you guys started the stream, you'll know the menu was like originally gray. It's now gold. That's pretty fucking cool. We've saved the game. I haven't even done rally school. I'm a really bad boy. Have you even thought about developing an RPG car experience? You might want to roll this back just a little bit. just saying. Let's look at the car list in this game before we, I don't want to say cash out, but it's kind of what we're going to do. It was a fun one. Greece, I think Greece stage like 5 was fun. Because we'll do one more on here. Anyway, so this game shipped with a pretty simple set of cars. You have your 4-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive I should say, WRC spec cars from, I believe, the 1998 WRC season. Although this is not a WRC licensed game, so there's fake drivers, fake decals. Like, you'll notice the number plate is just the Codemasters logo. or the Colin McRae Rally logo. So we got Colin's Subaru Impreza WRC that he drove just before switching to Ford. It was about a season or two before that happened. By the time Colin McRae 2 came out, he was driving the new Ford Focus in the WRC. The rival to the Mitsubishi Lance, or the rival to the Impreza, I should say, was the Mitsubishi Lancer driven by Tommy Mäkinen. That's what we just won the championship in, which is somewhat realistic. Mäkinen kicked Colin's ass throughout the 90s. Colin was just the more marketable driver who had one championship to his name, which, I mean, if you're winning championships in WRC, even if it's one championship or 5, you're a godly driver regardless because it's the fucking WRC. You have the option, I believe, of driving... Ethan's going to have to correct me on this. Is this Carlos Sainz's car? The Ford Escort WRC. This is a few years, again, before the Focus came out. It would be much smaller. WRC spec cars in the late 90s to early 2000s, when they moved from Group A to WRC, there were these massive sedans. They would obviously get a lot shorter in the following years after the Focus proved so successful, but Ford's entry in the late 90s was what was called an Escort. They don't make the Escort anymore. This is a huge car. It's honestly a great looking car, but not my personal cup of tea. I'll run either a Subaru or Mitsubishi most of the time. Shortest wheelbase in the game, the Toyota Corolla WRC. This was a pretty successful car too, if I remember correctly. Again, our rally fans in the chat are going to have to make comments on that. If the the Escort wasn't Carlos Sainz Sr.'s car, I believe it was this. Shortest wheelbase in the field, 10 less horsepower. The ugly bug-eye front end that plagued Toyotas in the late 90s. Toyotas were not attractive cars, which is why I was generally disinterested in them as a kid. Yes, I think so, albeit Carlos was in Repsol livery. Yep, you're correct about that. So he was in not the Focus, not the Fiesta, the Escort. Moving on from the Toyota, which is probably what you'd want to run as a short wheelbase car, and what I honestly should have done the championship in. We get the Seat Ibiza kit car. Kit cars are the front-wheel drive class in this game. You can only use them in the easy difficulty championship, which is basically the game's unlicensed version of... What would that be? F2 kit cars? So this is kind of like... I don't want to say equivalent to what I race in real life, but your front-wheel drive car that has between 170 and 200 and some horsepower. These cars were wicked fast in the 90s on tarmac. They actually kept up with the WRC cars, so I believe that's why they were put into this game. That's got a rival in the VW Golf kit car. 250 brake horsepower. That's a lot of fucking power for a car that small. No aero. This was the era of just really running production standard cars with big fucking engines and lots of handling upgrades. Once again, front-wheel drive. The Skoda Felicia kit car. They don't sell these in North America. I don't like Skodas for that reason. Cannot relate with them at all. 240 brake horsepower. Nice little livery. I believe it's Castrol/Skoda livery. Then we get into the bonus stuff that you unlock through beating the various special stages in career mode. So you get one shot at unlocking these, which is a pain in the fucking ass for completionists, but I'm not bad. So I was able to get them all in one go. Thanks, Game FAQs. So you get some cool bonus stuff in this game. You get the Ford Escort Mark II, which is Colin McRae's first rally car as an amateur. It was an iconic car in the 70s, very reliable, lots of wins. Great looking car too. It's what you expect from a 70s 4-cylinder car. Aesthetically pleasing. It's got cool body mods. Those fender flares, the small rear spoiler. It looks cool. It's a timeless looking car. And it's obviously been featured in just basically every rally game under the sun at this point as one of the starter cars. It was a bonus car here. The Ford RS 2000, or the 200. Numbers are hard. I'm kind of stoned still. 560 brake horsepower. This introduces the Group B stuff in the game. This car made it to the Group B scene a bit late to the party after Audi had already dominated. Group B, of course, was basically ended at the end of the 1986 season. Ford had just started to develop this. It was running very well regionally. They had plans to run it basically in 1987 and just destroy the field. It came a little late, so the car's full potential will probably never be known. But close to 600 horsepower, four-wheel drive, these cars were pretty insane. But it must be noted that current WRC cars blow them out of the water. I mean, everyone wants Group B rally racing to return, but nobody realizes we should be happy with what we have. The last 5 to 10 years of WRC racing have been completely insane. Really important to point that out, because we really don't need to be pining for Group B to come back when the current cars are just ridiculous. We move to the Lancia Delta Integral. I'm not sure what spec this car is. This looks like a Group A car based on the body kit. The Group B Lancia had way more radical rear fenders and like an intake scoop. This looks like the Group A spec car that you saw in Sega Rally, and the power output says a lot. 560 on the Ford compared to only 420 on the Integral. But who knows, maybe this might be a Group A car with Group B specs, but that power output looks a little low, especially compared to the last car in the game, the number 2 Audi Quattro. Sorry, I'm just getting pinged with a bunch of text here. Horser texting me. So your last car in the game that you unlock basically at the very end for beating the Great Britain special stage, the Audi Quattro with the body kit, basically the final evolution of the car before Group B was killed. So yeah, we're going to take that to Greece, a track I really enjoyed. Going through the campaign in the first night, going to run it with auto transmission because shifting is not a super amount of fun. Run a short 4-minute stage. We'll get going here. Okay. Tires, let's go. Yeah, you know what? Balance speed, even brakes. No, we'll move the bias back a little bit. One more. Let's do one more to end the night. Trying out a Group B car. Simple Grease stage, not a lot of crazy corners. Ian's texting me trying to get me to screw me up. Anyway, cockpit view, auto transmission because I'm tired of shifting. Let's see how quick this thing goes. The units in the bottom are in miles an hour instead of K. It's one of the few things you can't change in this game, and already like we're moving pretty good here. Camera's getting disoriented from the elevation changes. I don't like the simplified damage model, how you can bang off the corners, but I'll try not to wall ride too much. I do like how you can point the nose under braking. I do have analog braking. Again, I'm using an NGCon controller plugin. So anything X, Y, and Z axis related, throttle, brake, gas, is analog and essentially like I'm playing a PC game with proper wheel and pedal support. I do like how this feels under braking. The car dives nice. It's conveyed through the camera view. I can actually feel the front tires load up and gain grip. I can feel the car slow down nicely. It's actually not that bad to drive. It doesn't resemble other Colin McRae rally titles that are super arcade-ish with the car just pivoting on a central axis. It feels more like a very low-poly, simplistic like Windows 95 to 98 version of Dirt Rally. I can overdrive the front tires, especially in the WRC cars I spent the championship in. I had to creep into a lot of corners, which made hosting a podcast and talking with Ian and trying to drive competitively to beat the AI somewhat difficult. But thankfully, I ran all the visual pace notes, so didn't have to have the audio up really loud. I can actually feel the car like really stall out when I get dead sideways. It's not like they modeled the car sinking into the ground, but you can tell there's a lot of drag on the tires to kind of simulate that. When you get sideways, the car really stalls out and loses momentum quickly. Somehow a minute 34 up on the par time. Made the same mistake I did running last night here. Went too wide in that corner, but it is the stage I remember having fun with. And yeah, that's a lap in a Group B car. That's honestly not bad, guys. Crash, you bastard. Wow, so a 4-minute stage we did in 2:15. Wow. Good looking car. The texture work on this. You know, I want to point this out. This is, I believe, 1999 or 2000 PS1 graphics. The texture work on this car is super detailed. Like, I don't want to say it's the dithering, but like, you guys can probably tell from the stream alone. Like, the livery work is really good. The grill details are really good. The shivering little mites on the wheel. Yeah, that's correct. Anyways, guys, like, holy shit, that was almost 3 hours. I want to go to bed. I'll probably smoke another joint before I do. Thanks for coming out. I'll probably have to edit the video, so... Or not the video itself, but edit the title of the video. So people, you know, kind of know it's more than just us playing Colin McRae Rally. But thanks for coming out. For those who did and stuck around for 3 hours for what was an impromptu podcast with basically one of the pioneers of what we know as modern sim racing today. Like, that's what you got. Show feet. No, I won't do a feet cam for this game. Anyway, thanks for coming out. Guess I gotta change the title of it, but yeah. Cheers, and until next time. Thanks.